What is up, everyone? Welcome to what is probably going to be an extremely lengthy video on the Mac Pro 1,1 2006 first generation, first ever Intel Mac Pro. This machine is absolutely legendary, and as you guys saw on my workbench office setup renovation video, it's going to be part of my main setup and I have a use in mind for it. So we're just going to tweak it here and there, do some upgrades and make it kind of suitable for that. But along the way, we're going to have the perfect excuse to just completely and utterly ramble on about all things Mac Pro. So this is going to be really fun. I've been looking forward to doing this one. Let's get started. Here's a little bit of a closer look. Now, this machine is on the desk, but it's not set up at all. It's just plonked there. That's where it's going to live. It's not plugged in at all. We are going to set it up, have a little look at what it's got in it at the moment before we do the upgrades. Maybe run a couple of benchmarks. That might be fun. And then we're going to get to working on the machine. So this is where it's going to live. I'm going to use a KVM to swap between this and the little M1 Mac Mini here. This is my main machine, just out of frame there. So I'll be able to use this Mac Pro or the Mini with my main monitor, keyboard and mouse. And I'm hoping to kind of hopefully do some accurate-ish USB switching so that I can swap my audio interface so that I can still use my headphones and my studio monitors to monitor audio from the Mac Pro. Hopefully that'll be okay. I'm not going to be doing a lot of active switching, so it's more going to be kind of switch to the correct devices and then power up the machine that I need. I'm not going to be going back and forth. So that is something to keep in mind. That will make the KVM switching a little bit easier. If there are any switching bugs along the way, then that'll be fine. Sometimes with cheaper KVMs, you do get issues with USB devices and stuff. I don't even have the KVM yet. I haven't even chosen one. That'll come further down the line. First of all, I'm going to get the Mac Pro itself sorted, and that's what we're doing today. So just quickly touching on the use of the machine then before we look at the upgrades, just to give a little bit of context. This Mac Pro is pretty much stock-ish, kind of. We'll look at the specs. For the longest time, I've had a little 17-inch Intel iMac floating around here in the room set up, and that's been really handy if I ever need to dive into old, what I call kind of proper OS X. These days, Mac OS is very, very different, and I've got a lot of older applications and older things that were just kind of done back in the day and no longer work on the modern versions of Mac OS. Not daily things, not even weekly things, but just a collection of little things here and there that I need an older machine for. One of the main examples of that is anything to do with the analog video work I do, and more specifically the DVD burning that is involved with all of that stuff. So I do get projects from time to time where I've got a batch of old VHS tapes or a batch of old Hi 8 tapes or some old analog format. I use a capture card to import all that stuff. Then I've got a load of home movies for someone on my system, and 9 times out of 10, they want DVDs, and they want many, many DVDs so that they can give them to their family. Even with the kind of decline in popularity of DVDs, I'm still finding that it is the most popular way to deliver those final videos. I'll often give a USB stick as well, but yeah, 9 times out of 10, it is a DVD. For all things DVD, I use Toast, and I always have used Toast, but I've never purchased the new version that will run on the new Macs and under the new version of Mac OS. It's just not something that I've ever done. I've got the old version of Toast, I've got the old version of Final Cut for anything that I need to chop around with the analog video. I've got the old version of Compressor. I've got all this stuff that runs on the proper old Macs, the beasts like this, the stuff that just does not run on the new machines. So it's really nice for that kind of analog, standard definition, old school workflow. I'm going to keep it all on the older machine. Now, yes, you could do absolutely all of this on the modern machine. Of course you could, but it would involve me buying a little bit of software. It would involve me changing the workflow and then integrating those new patterns. It's not something that I do regularly enough to warrant any of those things. I get to upgrade this machine now and make it suitable for those tasks, which is great fun. I have the hardware here anyway. It is probably cheaper for me to do this entire upgrade right now and make a fun video for you guys than it is to buy the new version of Toast. I haven't even priced it up, but I pretty much guarantee that it is. Plus, we are then just relying on any kind of little external super drive. As you can see, I've got the Apple official one here. This is connected to my M1 Mac Mini. I've got that if I ever need to read an optical disc on the new system, which is surprisingly often because yes, I am fairly old school. But with this Mac Pro and something we're going to do in this video, we can put 2 optical drives in here. We can put 2 good, speedy, nice optical drives in here, and then we've got a lot more at our disposal in terms of disk burning and reading and this, that, and the other. It's got more I/O. It's got that expansion that we need. So yeah, this is a no-brainer for me. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. This is almost going to be my dedicated standard definition video box, little video box of wonders, which is exactly what these original Mac Pros are super good at. Yeah, of course you can edit 1080p with these guys, but those kind of advancements came a little bit later. Those things would be sluggish, but this is going to absolutely fly on the stuff that I want to do. And then as a bonus, I still have a system here that gives me access to all that older stuff. So anything that I need to do within a proper old version of OS 10, I have a nice speedy system here that I can do those things with. So let's check out the upgrades and see what we're gonna do. So I really wanted to get absolutely everything ready and spread it across the desk here and just have one giant pile, but unfortunately, I do not have the hard drives or the optical drives here. They are here somewhere, but I just don't know what I'm going to use yet, and I don't know what I'm going to dig out because there are optical drives and hard drives in the machine already. So I need to kind of look at that situation and see what's what and figure out what I'm going to do. So we'll be doing that later in the video. This is kind of like wave 1. This is the important stuff, and then we'll move on to the optical drives and the hard drives. So let's chat about what we've got here. First of all, let's get this out of the way. We are indeed putting an SSD in the machine. This is a Samsung 850 Pro 128GB SSD. I've got 2 of these lying around that came out of my Hackintosh. This will be perfect to run the operating system and applications. For the operating system, we're going to run Snow Leopard. So that'll be downgrading the machine essentially from Lion to Snow Leopard. And that's a perfect move because ultimately Snow Leopard will run all of the same applications just fine, and it'll do it quite a bit nicer because Snow Leopard, as we all know, is a quite a bit nicer OS than Lion. I don't bash on Lion majorly like some people do. It is kind of infuriating sometimes, especially when you're using dual monitors. They messed a lot of stuff up with Lion, and there's some horrible parts. I much prefer Snow Leopard, but Lion isn't a terrible OS in my opinion. It's just nowhere near as nice as Snow Leopard. So yeah, we're going to downgrade, install Snow Leopard on this drive along with the applications. So the applications will include my copies of the Toast Titanium suite, Final Cut Express 4, along with Compressor, a couple of other video conversion applications, and then just the capture card stuff, so the Elgato software and whatnot to capture the video in the first place. This drive will be perfect for all that. Obviously, it's going into a Mac Pro, so we will need one of these. Now, there were several different brackets and adapters available. Lots of different ways you could do this, but this was always my favorite. I bought this originally to upgrade my 3.1 Mac Pro, I believe, way back in the day. And it's basically a 2.5 to 3.5 inch adapter. Open, come on. You pop your 2.5 inch drive in there, then you put the lid on and you've got a 3.5 inch drive. This is quite elaborate and big. You can get smaller ones, but what I like about this is it's very discreet. So once it's in one of the Mac Pro bays, you can't tell that there's anything different about it. I remember OWC had a product, they may still even sell it, and it was a completely new Mac Pro tray that had a 2.5 inch mount in it, but then it was really obvious that you had a non-original Mac Pro tray in the machine because it was, I believe, blue in color. I always preferred this approach, so that's absolutely fine. You've got to watch out as well with adapters because a lot of 2.5 inch to 3.5 inch adapters make use of the kind of more PC mounting screws, which are these sides, which most PC cases use to mount, whereas the Mac Pro uses the bottom screws. So you need an adapter that will work with that. So that's the SSD will be going in there. And then just a quick note on use of the SSD itself. I kind of notice on my browsing of the internet these days and watching various YouTube videos, it's amazing, isn't it, how people bash hard drives now. It's like SSDs have come along. This is a SATA SSD, obviously, and now we've got the lovely super speedy M2 SSDs, the PCIe attached storage that is just super quick, really quick, and hard drives are just seen as the clunky old man, you know, and I totally get that. But when we're upgrading an old machine, it's really important to just kind of go back in time for a minute and imagine where hard drives were. When this Mac Pro came out, you couldn't even configure it with an SSD. It was still all hard drives. So this machine And this operating system and these programs will all work absolutely flawlessly and buttery smooth on a hard drive. They were all designed to work from a hard drive. It was still a couple of years away where SSDs started to come into the lineup. They were built toward a configuration in the Mac Pro and also the original MacBook Air. You could choose a version with an SSD. But you know, that was 2008, I believe. So still a couple of years away, and then definitely a couple of years until they were mainstream, a good few years until they were mainstream in the Macs. So hard drives ran perfectly well. Now, yes, it'll be nice and smooth with an SSD, but it's not perfect because we're going to be putting this into a SATA 2 bay. So this SSD is going to be throttled down to SATA 2 speeds. Granted, it won't be quite as throttled in this Mac Pro as it would in something like a G5 that have SATA 1 bays. This machine does have SATA Revision 2, so we'll get double the speed of a SATA 1 bay, but this is SATA 3 drive, as are nearly all SATA SSDs. At least all that you can buy now, and a SATA 2 SSD was even quite a rare thing back in the day. So yeah, we're not talking 10 times the performance of a hard drive, we're talking just a little boost here. This will stop the odd little bit of beach balling here and there. You won't have to wait for the disk to spin up. It will be quicker, but if I didn't have an SSD on hand and it was a really kind of tight situation, obviously I'd just use a hard drive and it would be completely fine. So a little bit of love for the hard drives there, guys. Just because I'm putting an SSD in this system doesn't mean that I would find the system not usable and super scary if it had a hard drive in it. The other thing is people think they're going to break all the time as well. That's the thing, because SSDs aren't mechanical. We now cite it as one of the improvements. So it's quicker, it's cooler, it's quieter, and they don't break. But obviously they do break. And people tend to talk about hard drives now like they're really fragile things that just self-destruct every 5 minutes. But obviously that's not true either. Anyway, little bit of a kind of old man rant there. Next up, we have the RAM. Now, this is a little bit naughty of me. A little bit naughty. The Mac Pro uses ECC memory, DDR2, 667 megahertz. Fully buffered DIMMs. Now, a proper Apple DIMM. Let me go and grab one. So this is what the memory looks like in the Mac Pro. It's got these giant heat sinks on it, makes it look really quite beefy. Now, Apple shipped the Mac Pro with memory just like this, with the big heat sinks on, and then obviously any built-to-order upgrades you did would have these heat sinks, and you could also buy Apple-approved memory that had these heat sinks on it as well. This is to maintain, at the time what Apple said was to maintain acoustic performance. And what that boils down to is the RAM needs these huge heat sinks on them to keep cool in the Mac Pro. If you don't have these heat sinks on and the memory temperature climbs, then the fans will spin up and you'll essentially have a louder Mac Pro by not using RAM with these heat sinks. Now, you can buy standard fully buffered DIMMs like this, ECC memory, that have just the more standard, thinner, less bulky heat spreaders on them instead of these big heat sinks. This RAM will run hotter, but it will still run, so that's cool. And we've got 32 gigs of the stuff here. In fact, we've got 36 gigs because I was sent a spare stick as well. 32 gigs, and this cost £20.99 on eBay, which is just awesome. Now, 32 gigs isn't even a standard configuration. The Mac Pro was officially supported, the first gen Mac Pro, up to 16 gigs of RAM, but then it was soon discovered that you could just stick 32 gigs in the thing anyway and it would run just fine. Even 16 gigs was a colossal amount of RAM at the time. If we'd all like to just kind of wind back and remember that the original configuration of the Mac Pro came with a mere 1 gigabyte of RAM. How crazy is that? 1 gigabyte of RAM in a top of the line system. That's where we were in 2006. Now, yeah, it was a little bit of a naff configuration at the time. If you weren't upgrading the memory as soon as you got your Mac Pro, you know, that's definitely something people did. But yeah, still 1 gig was apparently an acceptable amount to ship with. We're going to put 32 gigs in. Guys, we don't need 32 gigs. You know, it was a case of like, if I wanted to get 16, then that was like 17, 18 pound. If I wanted to get 32, that was like £20. Well, this was £21, free postage. Yes, I'm going to put 32 gigs in it. Why the hell not? Now, obviously, if this Mac Pro sounds like a jet engine and all this is running really hot, I'll just take it out, box it up, flog it, and then we'll put some proper heatsink RAM back in. But people do put these in the Mac Pro, so that's all good. The only downside is this kind of looks cooler on the riser cards. You'll see later on, this looks a lot cooler because the heatsinks are so big. Anyway, that is that. This is, like I say, 667 megahertz DDR2. In the Mac Pro that I had, the 2008, they upped the RAM a little bit because it was a slightly newer platform. It was 800 megahertz DDR2. And at the time, actually, I remember that this RAM, when I upgraded the RAM in my Mac Pro, it was maybe around 2012. Wow.
Hello everyone and welcome to my first video of 2012. So before anything, I'd like to wish everybody a very happy new year. 2 sticks of 2 gigabyte for my Mac Pro, 800 megahertz DDR2. Well, hey, not bad at all. I was really chuffed when I received my my first Google payment, and I think this is a great thing to spend it on. I think that can be considered a very successful RAM upgrade.
I finally managed to get another 4 gig. Mine came with 4 gig. I got another 4 gig, so it finally brought it up to 8 gig. It was really expensive to get the 800 megahertz RAM. It was a lot cheaper even back then to get this stuff on eBay, the 667 megahertz. And that would run in the Mac Pro 2008. It would throttle all your memory down to that speed and it would run just fine, but I was adamant at the time that I wanted the 800 megahertz RAM. I didn't want to sacrifice that speed. Not that I would have noticed any difference probably. But yeah, it was about 3 or 4 times more expensive to get that RAM. And then the 2008 Mac Pro was the last one that used these giant lovely heat sinks. The design changed quite drastically with the 2009 Mac Pro and the DDR3 RAM there. So yeah, that is the RAM upgrade. That's going to be very interesting. And the last piece of the puzzle we have here is quite a cheeky little addition. What would a Mac Pro upgrade be without ditching the horrible stock 7300 GT, which is the card in the system right now? This is a Radeon HD 5770. Now this card is not from the original selection of cards for this machine. This is an Apple Mac Pro card. This will work absolutely perfectly. However, this came with a 2010 Mac Pro. The 5770 was the stock card on the 2010 Mac Pro. And what was nice about that in 2010 is you were finally getting a somewhat decent graphics card as a non-BTO option for the Mac Pro. On the 2010 Mac Pro, you had this as stock, and then you could choose a BTO option to either add another one of these, or you could step up to a 5870, which is quite a bit more powerful than a 5770, but this was a nice card at the time. Now, a special thing about this card for me is it was always something that I wanted to buy. For my 2008 Mac Pro, I always wanted one of these, but the problem with these was they were kind of like the best, most readily available easy upgrade for the Mac Pro. So you could at the time stick all sorts of PC cards into the machine. You could also flash PC cards, but there was always downsides or complications. Like the GT640 that I eventually ended up running, you got no boot screen and that came with its own issues. This, you could stick it into any of the Mac Pros and it would work perfectly. And for that reason, and because it was a fairly decent graphics card as well, it really held its value. So when a 5770 was definitely getting older on in age and the performance was not amazing anymore because the newer generation cards had come out on the PC side, the value fell to where you could pick the card up for 50, 60 quid on the PC, whereas you were still paying a couple of £100 for the card for the Mac Pro version, because they really did hold their value all the way through. Just for fun, I checked eBay and these have finally dropped in value. So now for your Mac Pro, you can pick one of these up for 30 or 40 pounds. But when you think about it, that's still a colossal amount of money to pay. But hey, it's still a good option. It's still a good card to put in any of the cheese graters. There are obviously a lot more powerful cards you can put in, a lot better cards you can put in, but this is a lovely, solid option. So as I say, this came with the 2010 Mac Pro. I got this completely for free from a buddy of mine. So Mitchell, if you're watching this video, thank you so much, man. He gave me a load of stuff years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. He just gave me a box of stuff and this was in there. So I really hope this works. I've not tested it. I'm confident that it hopefully will. But yeah, if it doesn't, I don't really know what we're going to do about that. I've got the power cable for it somewhere, so that's all good as well. We've thought of that. Now, talking a little bit about the early Mac Pro, the 2006 Mac Pro, the first gen that we're upgrading, and this card, there are a little bit of kind of trade-offs. It is PCIe Gen 1 in the 2006 Mac Pro, so we can't quite leverage all the horsepower of a PCIe Gen 2 video card like this, but it will still work just fine. It's still an X16 double height slot in the original Mac Pro. It'll be perfect. Unless they were side by side, you wouldn't really notice it. But that is one of the limitations of the first gen Mac Pro. The first gen Mac Pro is unique in the fact that it has several more limitations than the 3.1 and above. You do have some of those sort of extra limitations there with upgrades and PCIe in general, because the 2008 got PCIe 2.0. So that was quite a big deal. It makes things a little bit different when looking for upgrades. And obviously on the OS side as well, the original Mac Pro was the only one that capped out at Lion. You could run way more modern OSs on the 2008, 2009 and 2010 Mac Pros. Getting back to video cards though, where were we in 2006? Well, the Mac Pro, if it shipped with 1 gigabyte of RAM, what was the stock video card? Well, of course, it was the legendary, famous, awful NVIDIA GeForce 7300 GT. It was a put pixels on the screen and forget about it type of video card. And what made it even more fun was the failure rate was fairly high. So there were some lovely stories back in the day of those cards failing and bringing people's Mac Pros down. These Mac Pros were sold in colossal numbers. They were very popular machines, so there are a lot of 7300 GTs floating around out there. As BTO options, you could get various other cards for the Mac Pro. You could get the ATI Radeon X1900 XT, which was a fair bit more capable than the 7300 GT, but that came with its own problems. It didn't have a very nice heatsink design, so it had a loud, whiny fan, and it used to really trap a lot of dust in the back of the heatsink.
That is the sound of my X1900. There it goes again, just ramped up again. That's the sound of my X1900 XT graphics card. Now that in there is solid dust, totally blocking the way.
I found this out for myself because the X1900 XT was the card that I had in my 2008 Mac Pro, which was quite amusing really because that wasn't even a BTO option for the 2008 Mac Pro, so someone had kind of upgraded that with a card from another machine before I bought it. But still a nice enough little card. If you wanted a bit more power, it was a good upgrade. Also, you could choose the Quadro option, so you could choose Quadros all the way through, not on the 2010 BTO options I don't think, but pretty much all the way through you could choose a high-end Quadro card for those professionals that really needed that. It was the Quadro FX 4500 in the original Mac Pro. Obviously that was incredibly expensive and not something that you really come across very often. You don't really see Mac Pros configured with Quadros appearing on eBay here, there and everywhere, but they are out there and they do pop up. And you could also choose, not originally I don't think, but pretty soon after the release of the Mac Pro, you could choose the NVIDIA GeForce 8800 GT, which was lovely because it was a great, very powerful, reliable card, and it was single slot on the Mac Pro as well, so it was really sleek and really lovely. That was definitely the best out of the batch, I think, to choose. But that's sadly a card that I've never come across, and maybe one day I'll get an 8800 GT in this machine to play with. Obviously, if I've got the 5770 in here, there's no real need, but yeah, it's still nice to look back on. If we've started down this rabbit hole, we may as well continue. Going up to the 2008 Mac Pros, you, as stock, received a 2600 XT, a Radeon 2600 XT, which was a fair bit nicer than the 7300 GT, so they finally ditched that. Obviously, we're kind of always glossing over the 2007 refresh, the 8-core refresh, because that's essentially exactly the same machine as this, and all the BTO options were the same. So yeah, stepping right up to the 2008, you got that 2600 XT. They kept the 8800 GT as a BTO option as well, for good reason, lovely card. And then the Quadro option on the 2008 was the Quadro FX 5600. Stepping up to 2009, they changed the stock card again. A lot of things changed about that Mac Pro. That was the GT 120. Again, not a very capable card, but you could step up to the lovely Radeon HD 4870. So before they did these 5000 series cards, you could get straight from Apple a lovely 4870, and that was a nice card. 4870 on the PC side and on the Mac side was a really nice GPU at the time. And then finally on the 2010s, you got the refresh with the 5000 series Radeon cards, the 5770 at stock, and then the 5870 as the BTO option. Only one number different there, but the 5870, of course, quite a bit more capable than the 5770. But For anyone who did not need to leverage the best in graphics performance that the BTO options had, the 5770 was fine for the vast majority of users. A nice capable card there as a stock card. And for the longest time, clinging on to their value. So at the time, I could never get one for my 2008 Mac Pro, but finally we have one. I just hope it works. I really hope it works. So they're all the upgrades. It's funny really kind of looking at all those video cards for the Mac Pro, how many Apple options were out there. But what you did get as well were third parties releasing video cards that work directly with the Mac Pro. They were always much more expensive than the PC counterparts. So you had kind of four main options. You either buy an overpriced video card from Apple and it works. You buy an overpriced video card from a third party that is specifically for a Mac and it works. You buy a PC card if you have the ability to flash it and you think that you can do that and get it all running, then great. Lovely, that is a fantastic option, the most affordable and probably the best option. And lastly, towards the later years, there were certain series of Radeon GPUs and GeForce GPUs that would just work out of the box under OS X, but with various drawbacks such as no boot screen and whatnot, and just keep an eye on drivers, and then upgrading macOS at some point may have broken that and things. So yeah, just a little bit of strange territory there, but Snow Leopard, original Mac Pro with a 5770 is a nice combination. No real point going any higher in an original Mac Pro because of that PCIe 2.0 limit there, or PCI Gen 1 1.0 limit on the slot itself. This is a 2.0 card. So because I don't have the KVM at the moment, and I think it'll be better to have this on an independent setup, I'm going to plug in my test monitor, keyboard and mouse to the Mac Pro, and we're going to see exactly what it's running now, get the specs, have a look at what's what. I especially want to find out what's going on with those drives because I can't quite remember. And then that'll help us choose the rest of the upgrade parts, and also we can just continue to upgrade, test and monitor the system on this independent setup here. So I've managed to put together a nice little setup here with the Mac Pro, and the perfect thing about this is we can just whip the door off, make changes, put the door back on, power it up, and we don't have to move everything around. So we've got the whole machine plugged in, everything's ready to rock. Let's boot it up and see where we are, because it has been a very long time since this machine was powered up. Haha, there we go, there's the little bong from the tiny internal speaker. Definitely a lot of noise of the machine. I can hear that there are many drives in there. I think there are 3 drives in here off the top of my head. Interestingly, we don't have any video yet for some reason. No signal at all. Okay, let me try swapping the DVI connector into the other port on the video card. By the way, folks, I'd completely forgotten, but I actually have 2 of the fairly horrendous 7300 GTs in this machine. There's a top card in here as well, and I remember now, after seeing that, I remember doing that in the video, and that's where I discovered that cool interface where you could select the speed of your PCIe lanes and stuff. Okay, so I've made that swap. No video at all whatsoever. Why? Let's try the other GPU. Take 2 on this. Let's see. There's the bong. Do you know what, guys? I'm getting absolutely no video out of this machine, so that is a good start, isn't it? Potentially it's something to do with the whole DVI to HDMI thing. Maybe, I'm not too certain. Maybe if I had a DVI monitor, it would be working. So this is turning into quite the battle. I cannot get video out of this Mac, and I know it's not the machine. It is something to do with the video cable setup here. DVI to HDMI is a lovely thing, but is not perfect. It's a little better than going HDMI to DVI. You can run into a lot more problems there, but it's still, as we can see here, demonstrated, not perfect. So I'm going to try this DVI cable with the Apple DVI to HDMI, even though this is technically HDMI to DVI adapter. We're just going to try this, because other than that, we are either going to have to go DVI to VGA and use VGA, even though at the moment I can't find a DVI to VGA adapter, Or we pull out a cinema display and we use a proper DVI display, which might be the best for this, to be honest. But I'm gonna try this first because it's the least amount of work. Okay, so that's that plugged in. Let's see what we get. I don't think we're gonna get anything. Do you know, this is a great experiment as well, because I'm building this test setup. I need to be aware of these things. There are gonna be regular times where I need DVI. Do you know what might be handy for this setup as well is a monitor that can do DVI. So maybe off this pole, I could bring another arm out and put a little Dell display on there. And then I've got my kind of 2 generations then, if you like, a monitor that's really capable of VGA and DVI, and then the more modern HDMI monitor. But then this monitor that I bought doesn't have DisplayPort, so it would actually be better to have a monitor that does HDMI and DisplayPort and another monitor that does VGA and DVI, and then I've got best of all worlds. All right guys, this is winding me up now, so I'm gonna go and find possibly a cinema display or whatever DVI monitor I can find that's kind of easiest. Okay, let's go and have a look. Man, all I want to do is see what this is doing. Well, it doesn't matter how hard I try. These lovely Dells just keep coming back. This is a proper monitor that just friggin' works. And it wouldn't surprise me if, as soon as I press this button, I get an image on the screen. Let's take a look. DVI. No! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh. Okay, hang on. Hang on. Has it just gone? Has it just gone to sleep? Display sleep? No! Wow. Okay, wild. Let me continue troubleshooting then. Okay. Interesting. There's the picture. Just needed that reboot with the proper monitor. Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. That's fine. Yeah, it might be worth me keeping this on the setup, this monitor, because if you haven't watched my kind of evolution of thought along the last couple of videos about my test monitor, I, for the PC stuff, just wanted a 1080p panel, because this isn't quite 1080p. I wanted, when I was doing tests and stuff on the PC side, games and graphics stuff, I just wanted that really standard resolution, because this is a weird resolution these days, 1680 by 1050, the 16 by 10 aspect ratio. You just don't see that, so it's just kind of weird. Plus, it's an older monitor. Oh man, what? Oh no. Oh, cool. That was lucky. Wow, we've got 4 hard disks. Yeah, so anyway, the thing was, I wanted to get that newer monitor, but as we've just seen, it may not always play ball with kind of adapters, DVI to HDMI. Obviously, that's normally okay, but it might not be. That monitor's doesn't seem great at picking up different systems, I must be honest. I had trouble with it the other day when I was trying to connect my overhead camera. But that had a bunch of other problems going on as well. So with all that monitor drama out the way, I've got you guys a nice little angle here. The machine is booted. We're all good to go. So we can finally check out what's going on, remind ourselves of the specs, and maybe give a little bit of a performance test before we start to fiddle with the machine. So what I noticed right away is we've got 4 hard disks on the desktop here. I was pretty sure there was 3 in here, but yeah, maybe 4. So we'll check out what's going on with the drives later. We've got 1 OS drive and then just 3 untitled storage drives. I struggle to remember what was in the machine when I got it and stuff, but I know there were a few drives, so we'll check those out later. Let's delve into about this Mac and have a look at the rest of the specs. So this is a fairly stock Mac Pro. It is nothing crazy as it stands at the moment. We're of course running Lion, and we spoke about Lion earlier in the video. This is version 10.7.5, which is the last incremental upgrade before, before Mountain Lion. Not a terrible OS, but certainly not a pleasant OS. Introduce a few things. You've got the Launchpad. Oh man, that is rough. Launchpad, this is the 7300 GT at fault here. This would run a fair bit smoother with a better video card. Yeah, that is nasty. Does this do slow-mo? Yeah, there you go. Check out that frame rate. I don't know if that's picking up on camera there, but that is pretty nasty. Ooh. Look at that. Look. The slow-mo effect, the animation is tied to the dock. So because I've got hide dock enabled, when I move my mouse off the dock, it disappears, the whole thing. So yeah, the OS is a little bit quirky like that, as well as being not quite as stable and not quite as speedy and streamlined feeling as Snow Leopard. It's still got the nice look. It looks a lot like Leopard and Snow Leopard, but then again, so does Mountain Lion. So yeah, ooh, Finder is stripped back there a little bit, isn't it? There we go. Yeah, that's the default view that this person has got set up on here. I didn't do a fresh install on this machine when I got it. It's still called Martin's Mac Pro. I noticed when I saw it pop up on my network when this machine booted. It's quite funny, really. Anyway, let's get back to checking out the specs. So we've gone through the OS. For the processor, this is your stock 1,1 configuration. The vast majority of 1,1 machines are running this CPU config. So this was a lovely little middle ground. This is an interesting thing with the Mac Pro, with the first one, the 1,1 machine. They offered this, so if you walked into the Apple shop and you wanted to buy a Mac Pro, this is the configuration they had on the shelf. Same with the Apple website, if you just wanted to buy it off the shelf, it was 2 times 2.66 gigahertz dual-core Intel Xeon CPUs. This is a Woodcrest machine. These are 5150 Xeons, so really old CPUs by today's standards, of course, but at the time, absolutely gorgeous. And as soon as the software kind of caught up with the whole PowerPC to Intel transition, these Mac Pros were able to accelerate quite a bit beyond the most capable G5s. And the pricing structure got a lot better at the time as well. In terms of core count, we are similar here to, well, we're identical here to what we saw on the highest end G5. So the highest end G5 was running 2 dual core G5s for a total of quad cores. Same here, 2 dual core CPUs running for a total of 4 cores. Slightly higher clock speed on here, and of course a whole new platform. This is an Intel machine. And all the differences that that brings to the table, especially the internals of the machine, obviously the entire platform. So just a huge kind of jump here from the G5 to the Mac Pro. At the time, definitely a hugely substantial thing. The interesting thing that I wanted to describe about this guy was this is the stock configuration, like I said, and then there was a BTO option. You could step up to 3 gigahertz. So that would be the 5170 CPUs, I believe. No, apologies, I've just double checked. It would be the 5160, so a slightly quicker CPU. But the interesting thing is you could also step these down. So there was a 2 times 2 gigahertz version. That was BTO as well. If you didn't want this kind of speed, you could step all the way down to a 5130 CPU, I believe, 2 gigahertz on the machine. And that's kind of unheard of now, is configuring your Mac downwards. So you didn't really see a lot of the 2 gigahertz models. I remember back when I really first started looking at getting a Mac Pro way back in the day, and I was looking specifically at these ones, because like I've said many times before, the 2008 was kind of like a last minute deal. I was all set on getting an original 1,1 Mac Pro, and then I got the 2008 as a kind of bonus, so that was brilliant. But they were the 3 choices. You either went 2 gigahertz, 2.66, or 3 gigahertz. And all of those models were available on eBay, but 80–90% of them were the 2.66 gigahertz. Quite rare to see a 3 gigahertz model, or rarer than seeing a 2.66, and then definitely rare to see a 2 gigahertz model. And that would be a machine that I would be quite interested in obtaining, even though it would be exactly the same as this, just with a slightly slower CPU. But that does fascinate me. That was always the machine that kind of fascinated me. And I guess it makes a lot of sense because, let's say, for instance, a college wanted to place 16 or 20 or 24 of these machines in a lab. If you were to step each one down to 2 gigahertz, you'd still have all of the power, the capabilities, the I/O that you needed from your Mac Pro, but you'd save, look at the money you'd save across an entire installation of those machines just by sacrificing a little bit of the CPU speed. So with a similar mindset to some of the education Macs that Apple offered, that was a little bit more of an affordable option there. So stepping down to the memory, we have got 4 gigs in this machine right now. Can't quite remember the layout, but we'll have a look at that in a minute. 4 gigs, a nice little spec for back in the day. Believe it or not, this came with 1 gigabyte of RAM. I think I mentioned that earlier in the video. Of course, absolutely crazy stuff. This has got 4 gigs, so this would be quite a typical configuration you see back in the day. The stock CPU speed and then 4 gigs of RAM, definitely a sensible configuration. If you were stepping up to something like 8 gigs of RAM, then yeah, that was a really nice capable machine, and anything above that was just like, whoa, you know, you must be doing something pretty intense. Let's check out more info and have a little look. So yeah, this gives us a little bit more info here. We've got our graphics, the GeForce 7300 GT, 256 megabytes of VRAM on this guy. So this was still at a time where claiming that you had a video card with 512 megs of video RAM was quite a big thing. If you were to step up to like an 8800, for example, that was a card that had 512 megs of RAM. The MacBook Pro 2008, for instance, you could upgrade it to a video card that had 512 megs of VRAM. You know, that was kind of like the flagship point at that time. I always remember a music teacher I had back then, and he had a MacBook Pro, and it was configured with the 8600 GT card that had 512 megs of RAM, and his way of describing it was always like, yeah, I've got the 512, man, I've got the 512, and I was like, yeah, cool, because, you know, that was that, but kind of hilarious to look back on now, how there was such a distinction there, and we've got gigabytes and gigabytes of VRAM these days, or just unified memory in the Macs, of course. What else have we got going on here? With this dialogue, it's kind of hard to tell that we've got 2 graphics cards, but obviously we will be able to check that out in a bit more detail in a minute. Here's the drives. So we've got Lion, we've got an empty 500 gig drive there, an empty 500 gig drive there, and it looks like a 250 gig drive here, and I've got about 65 gigs worth of what says movies here, but it's just video files that I've converted in the past, and they're stored on the drive here. Also looks like I've got a duplicate of those same files on the OS drive, so that makes sense. And then we've got our super drive in there. Memory. So we've got quite a spread out configuration here. 2 1 gig sticks, bringing us to 2 gigs, and then our 4 5 12 sticks, getting us to that magic 4 gigabytes. If I was doing a somewhat sensible, not overkill upgrade to this machine, purchasing another 2 gigabyte sticks and then just reshuffling these pairs would definitely be the sensible thing, because that would bring us up to a lovely 8 gigabytes. That is completely enough memory in this machine. 4 gigs would be enough for all of this stuff that I'm doing anyway, but if we were going to do that and occupy all the slots and retain the RAM, then that might be a more sensible upgrade. So what we'll say is, if this 32 gigabyte crazy £20 kit that I bought from eBay doesn't work out, if it ends up getting too hot, the machine's too loud, we can always look at putting this RAM back in, and then I'll just top it up with another 2 proper Apple heatsink 2 gigabyte sticks, 2 by 2 gigabyte sticks. So that's cool. Let's jump into the system report here, and the first thing that I'll show is what is not clear on this report, and that is the graphics. So as you can see, we have 2 of them, and we chose to run them both at X8 speeds. So that was an option that we had when installing 2 GPUs. You could choose, I think if you were to retain 16X on the bottom slot, you would drop the top slot to 4X, I believe. But yeah, you can see slot 1, slot 2. So the monitor's connected to the card in slot 1. Basically means that the card in slot 2 is doing absolutely nothing. So the only advantage to doing this is if you had, say for instance, 2 displays, you could plug the other display into the other 7300 GT, and then you wouldn't be putting quite as much pressure on the primary 7300 GT. And as absolutely ridiculous as that sounds, this card is such a pancake that putting 2 monitors on one of them can really slow them down. It's quite a nasty card, so having 2 of them was a bit of an upgrade, but just most definitely better to swap to a higher end GPU overall. So we'll pull both of these out. I'm not sure what on earth we're going to do with them. Obviously we've already looked at the memory and stuff. You can see got 2 empty slots there. Let's have a little look at the disk burning, because okay, we've got a Sony drive in here. That's cool. We're not going to fiddle with the optical drive at all at the moment. That'll come later, same with the hard drives, but that is a good benchmark for now. I'm just going to quickly confirm the hard drive stuff in disk utility, just to see if we've got anything going on. I think pretty much we've got a really straightforward setup here. There's 4 drives plugged in. Here they all are spinning up. Don't know if you can hear them. I can definitely hear that dog barking in the background. Okay, there we go. Yeah, there's the 4 drives. And they're all pretty fresh. Presumably I may have erased them, possibly when the machine arrived, or maybe they were erased already. But yeah, we're not going to need these 4 drives in the machine at all. I am kind of inclined to not use any of them, maybe, or maybe I could keep these, because these are matched, I could keep these, maybe take these out. Oh, sorry, that's 250 gig as well, so what have we got? 250 gig drives. Oh yeah, did I determine? I think I determined in the upgrade, in the when I got the machine, sorry, that they were Apple stock drives, did I? Yeah, we'll have a look when we pull them out of the machine, because I think we then determined that this machine was a BTO, because we did some of our lovely detective work where I overthink things with the memory and the drives to try and figure out what was the original configuration the person ordered. ATA, this is of course serial ATA, isn't it? Yeah, okay, fantastic. So that's everything in the machine right now. What should we do then, guys? What shall we do? Should we get some baseline tests? Should we get Xbench on here? We could get Xbench and we could get Geekbench. We could run some stuff and then do the upgrades. I think that is worth looking at. We've got a copy of Geekbench. I just quickly connected to my server to install Geekbench. Did the same with Xbench, but there was already a copy on here, so can't remember if I installed that or not. Let's run Geekbench on this guy. Now, because we're not upgrading the CPU, there's not going to be a huge amount of difference, but we're upgrading the memory, so there could be a slight difference. Do you know what as well? We're only going to be able to run the 32-bit test on Geekbench here, because it's a trial. Okay, I might have, okay, we'll just run the 32-bit for now. That's fine. It's not really important anyway, because with the upgrades we're doing, not changing the CPU, there might be a bit of a difference with the memory, but really not that much on Geekbench there at all. There we go. I thought they were looking a little misaligned. So that'll run the 32-bit benchmarks. Because we're not changing the drive straight away, we'll do the memory and the video card first. We can just save all the screenshots on here so we can remember what they are. Normally, I think I'd kind of like to pull everything out and then put everything new in and then just give it a big old boot and see where we're going. But there are a couple of reasons why I don't want to do that. First of all, I've got a lot of parts where I don't know if they're actually going to work or not. That video card is, I don't know the status of it. That RAM is going to be a little bit iffy possibly. So I just need to do things one by one. And the other reason is as well, I do not currently have my copy of Snow Leopard. I don't have a clue where it is. I remember lending it out to somebody. Don't have a clue where that is. I wanted to install off the DVD because I do own a legit copy of Snow Leopard that I received for my birthday back in 2009. So I can't really believe that I've managed to lose that or misplace it, or I forgot to ask it back from whoever I lent it to. I do obviously have other copies of operating systems. I've got a copy of Snow Leopard disk image on my server, but I'd really like to install from the DVD if possible. 5,468, so that's really cool. Let's just grab a little photograph of that. So that one is pre-upgrade. Okay, cool. And let's run Xbench, which is going to be a bit more exciting because we can test everything. We can test the graphics, test the memory. Let's have a little look and see what we want to do. Oh, we'll test the hard disks as well. We'll test it as the OS volume, because that will then obviously show us the SSD speed increase when we run these benchmarks again. So CPU, thread, memory, disk, Quartz graphics, OpenGL, and user interface test. So yeah, we should see an improvement in loads of these areas. I have to say, guys, and this is no exaggeration, I'm sat here in a t-shirt, and it was one of those scenarios before I started filming. I was like, maybe I should grab my jumper, you know, it's a little bit chilly here. The room is lovely. It is toasty hot now. When I was fiddling with the monitor connections, one of the first things I noticed was how quickly the exhaust fan was just boiling. I've been playing around with my little custom PC build earlier on the last video and stuff, and for a couple of weeks, and just going back to this stuff, this generation of stuff where just a severe amount of heat gets kicked out of it. It's insane. You know, like when you go with the Apple Silicon Macs and my Mac Mini, I can hammer it, absolutely hammer it, and then it's freezing cold to the touch, absolutely freezing cold. It's just crazy, the heat pouring out of this thing. People always say about the G5s being hot and being space heaters, and yeah, they were. Obviously, one of the nice things about going Intel was there was a fair bit more performance per watt. Machines weren't quite as power hungry and weren't quite as sort of toasty. So a little bit better there, but obviously this is no laptop. This is a full-blown Xeon workstation. So my gosh, the heat does come pouring out of it. It's absolutely lovely though. I love computer heat. So I'm pretty sure that we are not working correctly here with this test. We've kind of halted on the thread test here. There's no CPU activity, and it's been a good while. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to stop the test. I'm pretty sure maybe we're looking at a situation here where this isn't working. So I'm going to remove the thread test from the list here at the beginning, because it doesn't really matter anyway. Don't save. Yeah, so if we do that, we'll keep the CPU test, that run fine, memory test, user interface, we'll keep everything else. We'll just remove that thread test and then start it. So this benchmark will get kind of flakier and flakier the further up you go in terms of hardware, and yeah, there we go. It's the thread test that hung it up. So this benchmark is designed for super old hardware, super old. So even this absolutely crap video card can crunch through it super quick. And yeah, the test is extremely, it's going through everything. So we were hanging on that thread test there. I don't even know if this is optimized for Intel in any way. I'll check if it's a universal app in just a second. We'll find that out. It could be running in Rosetta. So we're just doing the disk speed now. And then what we'll do is we'll collapse all the results and we'll just take the overall score. Okay guys, let's have a little look at this and see what we got going on. Let's drop down these so that we can just take these scores. Quartz, OpenGL, then we can look at them side by side. Disk test, there we go. So looking quickly at Xbench here, this is version 1.3, and it is indeed a universal application. So what I've done is I quickly jumped onto the Xbench website that is still up, and I looked at the version history, and 1.3 is the absolute latest version. So it was released August 2006, which coincides with our file date creation here. There was quite a few corrections and changes in that version. It was in version 1.2 that the app went universal binary to run on both PowerPC and x86 Mac, so that's cool. But one thing I noticed on this version history of Xbench, obviously development ceased after this version 1.3, is I noticed that there are a lot of small updates to fix various crashes on different platforms and whatnot. So we're on, this app was around when this Mac Pro was around-ish, but we are running Lion, which is from 2011, and there were several changes. So it looks like optimization OS-wise only went up to Tiger, and it mentions correcting various things for Tiger within the update history. So it's no wonder it doesn't quite properly run on Lion. So that might, if we run this on Snow Leopard, that might kind of alter our scores as well. But again, you know, that's still a much newer OS than this version of the app. So lovely little app from back in the day. Okay, great stuff. So let's shut down this Mac and crack it open and have a little look inside. So first things first, we are going to unplug the power. And for those of you who are well seasoned in Mac Pros, I do apologize, but we are going to go start to finish on this whole thing again, because why not? If we're going to talk about the machine, we may as well talk about the machine. So case design, same as the G5 on the exterior. Very subtle differences, such as the 2 optical drive bays. An obvious change on the back was the power supply moved from the bottom of the unit all the way up to the top. So your power cable is coming out of the top. Slight reconfiguration of the fans. We've got 1 bigger fan instead of 2 smaller fans. We have different I/O and a different number of PCIe slots. And all of those changes on the back are reflected in the internal layout. Or rather, the changes on the back are a reflection of the newly improved internal layout, which is, admittedly, as much as I love a good G5, the Mac Pro internal layout is just something of sheer beauty. Within the G5 layout, the G5 processors themselves and their massive heat sinks and their array of fans took up a huge amount of space within the case. So there was only room for 2 hard drives, 1 optical drive, and I believe 1 less PCIe slot. So here we get a double height one at the bottom, and then we get 3 single height PCIe slots. Now it is very dark in there, I do apologize. I have not perfected my video lighting in this room, but you guys can see the 2 7300 GTs right there, tiny little horrible cards, and then there's still room for upgrade. So let's have a little look at the way everything kind of comes to pieces. You've got user accessible parts and non-user accessible parts. Obviously you can change everything in this machine fairly easily, but some stuff was designed to be changed instantly by the user. So power supply, it's behind this cover. You can change it if it goes, but it's not an instantly accessible part. Due to the design of the Mac Pro, unlike a PC, you do not need to unplug and plug cables in and out of the power supply. Everything is handled for you. Even plugging in video cards, there are power connectors there on the motherboard. You do not need to access the PSU. It is just there, all integral into the machine. But next to the PSU with the optical drives, as you can tell by the handles here, this is a portion that was designed to be pulled out by the user. So this entire cage can just be yanked, and then you instantly have access to your optical drives. This was an absolute triumph of design for Apple. They even include, let's say for argument's sake, you want to put your second optical drive in the machine. I'll tell you what, let's just unplug it. They include absolutely everything you need. So all of the cabling is here already. 2 Molex connectors for the 2 drives, and then your IDE ribbon that has 2 connectors on it. But when it comes to screwing in the second drive, don't worry, because they include the 4 screws that you need right there on the cage. You just unscrew them, they're just sat in there, and then you screw your other drive in. So that is absolutely perfect. This drive is looking a bit disgusting. We'll leave that out for a minute and give it a wipe over. This also gives us a closer look at the cabling coming from the power supply area. So you get to see all of these cables plugged in and running down the back of the machine here, running all the way down there to their various areas that they're running to supply power to the machine. Super clean stuff. So below this top area here, there's also a fan here for the power supply, by the way. So it exhausts the air. You've got this front to back thing going on, same as the G5, so various cooling chambers, if you like, front to back through the machine. Hard drives, these 4 bays along here, completely toolless to just remove a hard drive and put it back in. The only time you need a screwdriver is if you're physically changing the drive on the sled. So this lock system doesn't only lock the door, but it locks the hard drives in place as well. That's unlocked, that's locked. When it's in a locked position, you cannot pull the drives out, which is absolutely tremendous. Really handy for shipping as well. They can't slide in and out of the motherboard and damage the connectors. They are just stuck there. So all of the connectors, power and data, in this case these are SATA drives. Obviously the G5 went SATA for its hard disks long before it did its optical drives. G5 was always IDE optical drives, and then we finally got SATA optical drives in the 2009 Mac Pro. But to Apple's credit, the G5 was SATA on the hard disk drives from day one, which is cool. Open that up. Pulling one of these out is as easy as just giving it a yank, and then you have your hard disk really easily accessible here. I think it is hard to remember sometimes just how convenient this was. Anybody, absolutely anybody, could add storage to this machine without a shadow of a doubt. To put it back in, you just slide it in and away to go. These screws are even capped, so you can't lose them. When you unscrew the drive, or if you have an empty sled, the screws are just sat there waiting for you. You just tighten them onto the drive and away to go. Absolutely lovely stuff. They've also got rubber grommets on them to kind of isolate them ever so slightly from the vibration. There is a bit of drive vibration in this machine. It could do with a little bit more dampening, but this was still, for the time, a very, very quiet machine. One thing that the previous owners have done with this Mac Pro, which I despise, is they have written on the drive sleds. So that is what it is. It allows you to remember what drive is where, but in my opinion, it's kind of unnecessary, because you could just take the numbers off the bays here and keep a little notebook, or better still, a little text file or something like that on your system so you know what's what. It just depends obviously on the way that you organize yourself, but I think writing on the inside of the machine like that is kind of unnecessary. Next up we have our PCIe section, and as you can see, this is a generous amount of space, and you've got a nice kind of shelf here that the bottom video card sits on. So if you've got a huge bulky video card, it sits there on the shelf. Not only do Apple do that to protect the video card in transit, but over here for the super long video cards, and this was a staple of the Mac Pro all the way through, you get this lovely support bracket that the end of the card slots into. So with a long card, you just slot the little component, and that's what the extra plastic is often for on the back of an Apple card, or a card that is designed specifically, by AMD or NVIDIA to go into a Mac Pro for Apple. They have an additional plastic portion on the back. There's nothing there. Sometimes maybe even some extra kind of blank PCB. It's all just a slot into this slot here, and that's to make it a little bit more robust when moving the machine, because a common thing is video cards and various other cards sliding out of slots in transit, but that wasn't really an issue with the Mac Pro. Even if you're putting a secondary big long video card in, you still get the supports up here all the way through, so that's nice. In terms of the PCI slots themselves, it is one cover, so 2 screws here that are kind of thumb screws as well, so you don't even need any tools for this. You just unscrew this bracket, pull this bracket off, and then you can slot the cards in. So not even additional fiddly PCI screws there, because it's sort of buried behind the case here. It would be a little difficult. So this door is a big improvement. Again, these are captive screws on this as well, which is really cool. Tucked up away here in the corner, right up there, we have our power connectors for the video cards. So they came with 2 connectors, but you can split off if you wanted to run more power connectors to more video cards, obviously within kind of reason, but that wasn't really done. There was an adequate power here for any of the stock configurations and the BTO configurations. For instance, if you were to configure this with 2 5770s, they require 1 connector each, so they'd both have power. You wouldn't be able to do that obviously with this model, sorry, I just kind of thought of that, but that's the card we're putting in. If you were to configure it with a card that required 2 power connectors, then you've got the 2 power connectors there. Also here we have a little slot for our airport and Bluetooth card. I believe that's what that is. And then the last really cool kind of user accessible upgrade portion is of course the RAM. And these riser cards were in the 1,1, 2,1 and 3,1 Mac Pros. After this, they went to an overall tray design, and the CPUs and the RAM would come off in one big tray. But with this, we have these lovely risers, and there is nothing quite as satisfying as looking at a fully populated riser card with all of this lovely memory in here. It just looks so cool. And do you know what, guys? We're just gonna go for it. We're gonna try, I'm so curious, we are gonna try that 32 gig kit right now. So let's pull out all of this RAM. Again, these are all the proper heat sinks. I just really want to see if this machine is going to boot with this memory. I'm not even going to clean it yet. I'm just going to stick it in because I've actually had this stuff lying around. And if you guys couldn't tell, there was a gap between the recording of the intro and the next portion of this video. I've been waiting days and days to get this done. It is just so difficult to find the appropriate time to film. Now, as you can see, these don't look quite as beastly, but it's still pretty cool. They've got the heat spreaders. They're just not quite as bulky, big and bulky. So there's 16 gigs there. Yes, that is probably going to be quite toasty. I will say though, that there is nice spacing on the slots. So the air can get around. The big exhaust fan is right there. So I don't know. Let's see if we get away with this. Let's see. Why do I need 32 gigs? I do not know. Nobody needs 30. Oh man, look at this. This is getting really a little bit rustic now. Something that's really bothering me is the only DIMM that has the label this side is this one back here, and it's not looking quite the same. So I'm gonna grab the spare, see if the spare is a better visual match, and yes, it is. Lovely. Okay, sweet. Putting the memory back in is as easy as just sliding it in. Is this thing gonna boot? I don't have a clue. Slide that in. Awesome. We'll leave the optical drive disconnected for now, but we'll put the side panel on. The Mac Pro is quite a clever machine, so is it gonna make a fuss about the way that we've left the optical drives? I'm not too sure. I doubt it. Plugging the power cable back in, pressing the button. What are you gonna do, Mac Pro? Let's see. First of all, does it bong? Okay, there's a bong. Something is making quite the racket in there now. Check that out. Apple logo. It's booting, guys. It is booting. It could be those cables vibrating against the metal there because they're just loose. Oh man, I can't believe it. Let's see what this does. Come on. Come on. Okay, are we ready? Are we ready about this Mac? Oh, no, what are you doing? 24 gigs of RAM detected. What the hell? And it's booted, even though some of the RAM is clearly not detected. Ooh, okay, interesting. Okay. That's interesting. So we haven't got 2 of those 4 gig sticks. Let's shut this down. First of all, even the dogs are excited outside. Wish they wouldn't bark through my video though. We're gonna do a basic reseat. Obviously we can go in and determine what slots are the defective ones, like what DIMMs, but I'm just trying the basic reseat first of all to see if we get a different result. Lovely, so that's all that in. This time as an experiment, I'm going to see if she'll boot with the side panel off. There we go. There's that. I know the G5 made a big fuss. Don't know what the Mac Pro does. There's the bong. So that new vibrating noise is this disc here. What have we got now, computer? Ooh, 24 gigs. 24 gigs. So let's have a little look and see. Empty, empty. So riser A, riser A, riser B, riser B, riser A, riser A. So what I'm gonna do with this is I'm going to install, because it's in pairs, right guys? So I've got 1 spare stick, but I don't have 2 spare sticks, but it might be that only 1 of those sticks are defective. So we're looking at riser card A, DIMM 3 and DIMM 4. So that'll be labeled on the riser card. Let's shut this down again. Okay, unplug the power. This is riser card A. And then we have got DIMM 3 and DIMM 4 here. So I'm gonna remove these. And then just as an experiment, I'm gonna put 2 of the old memory sticks back in here. So if I put 1 of these guys, this will let us know if we've got the correct slots. Gonna do this just to see if I can get it to boot like this and display all 8 sticks. And then I know that I can start experimenting with swapping this into either one of those. Because it could be that that 1 stick, they might not both be defective. Could just be that 1 stick bringing the pair down. Oh no, I've dropped my power cable. This step that I'm doing right now isn't strictly necessary. I could have gone straight into troubleshooting with the larger sticks, but this will just kind of reinforce my thought process behind that next experiment by allowing me to prove that, hey, yes, it will, you know, all 8 slots are good, blah, 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 blah. What have we got now, guys? What have we got now? 25 gigs of RAM, because we have put in, drum roll please, memory, 2 512 sticks. Okay, sweet. So, we know we've got the right slots. We know our theory works. So yanking the power on there as well. Back out. Two working 512s. Okay, we will start with putting this guy in. Let's put him there. And we will take 1 of these other sticks. If this pair doesn't work, we can swap this with this. If the pair still doesn't work, then unfortunately we will not be able to reach our magic 32 gig. But you know what? We can actually rock with 26 gig because we can use the 2 1 gig sticks, and that will be 24 gig plus 2 gig, 26 gigs. How much RAM does your Mac Pro have? 26 gigs. Nice. Good choice. Here we go. Another bong, very reassuring. In a minute, what I'm probably going to do is slide out all of these excess hard drive sleds, because having these hard drives constantly up, down, up, down, up, down, it's annoying. It possibly extends the boot time as these disks spin up and whatnot, but it's just not good for them. So we're going on off, shake it all about, and it's likely that we'll be doing more on off as the system as we upgrade more of the system here. So I just want to give these drives a fighting chance. I mean, all 4 of them are working at the moment. It's not that I've got a shortage of drives by any means. I'm absolutely surrounded by them, but I don't see the point in purposefully damaging hardware. What have we got now, guys? About this Mac, and we are reading 32 gigs of RAM. More info on that one, 4 gigs in each. So we were lucky with the stick that we chose. That is one defective stick, and it can throw you off because you'd think at first glance, I've got 2 defective sticks, but because they operate in pairs, if one stick in the pair goes down, this is what can make troubleshooting Mac Pro RAM a little bit difficult. If one stick of RAM goes down, then you won't detect that pair. So if this didn't work, the next step would have been to swap that other one out for this one, keeping the spare swap in that we already did. But luckily, we've got 32 gigs of RAM in the damn thing now, and we know this stick is defective. So that's absolutely fine. And hats off to the eBay seller for giving me a 9th stick for this exact reason. If one of them's bad, then at least you've got a little chance of being able to resurrect the kit. If one more was bad, that would have been annoying, but hey, we've got 32 gigs of RAM. So let's just take another little look here. As you can see, it still displays a 667 megahertz DDR2 FB DIMM because they are the correct memory modules. They just don't have the big old heatsink on them there. Memory, there you go. As you can see, riser A, riser B, riser A, riser B, 4 gig, 4 gig, 4 gig, everything looking good. Status okay on everything. Absolutely perfect. So I'm not going to do the full test, guys, but let's for fun, should we do a memory test on Xbench? Because I'm getting ahead of myself here now. This is where I start to really kind of go off script, if you like. Not that I have a script. Memory test here on the old score, 157.97. On the new score, 165.69. So we have an increase. It hasn't exactly doubled or tripled, but there it is. So look at that lovely increase there with the memory test. Let's see. See that again. Memory test 157.97. So let's install a huge amount more RAM, get 16569. Sweet result. Okay, that's really cool. I tell you what, let's just continue in the exact same kind of vibe here. Let's do the same test for the video card. So everyone say goodbye to the 7300 GTs because I'm itching now to know if these video cards are going to work. The new video card, sorry, singular 5770. So this is kind of frustrating. I know the lighting is terrible. Let's unplug the machine. I will get it sorted for future videos, guys, but as a description to what I'm doing now, I'm just pulling off this bracket that I was speaking about earlier. So this one singular bracket holds the cards in place, and you've got these lovely captive spring screws going on there. These being PCIe slots, you still have to be mindful to release them. There's one. And there's two. So slot cover wise, let's give you a little look at these first. There you go, a little bit toasty because they've been running. There we go, there's those two. Horrendous cards. We're gonna balance those on top of the machine for now. Here is the replacement beast, and we're gonna plug the power cable into it. So with these Mac PCIe power cables, we have the full size on the card end, but then we've got a smaller mini style connector for the motherboard. So this is the plastic portion that I was talking about that gives it the extra support in the slot, and it's just as easy as sliding the whole thing in. There's the GPU in place, so now we can just plug it in. Not that I can see where we are. This task is a little bit fiddly just because of how far away the connectors are on the board. There we go, there's that. Now we can put the bracket back. Okay, so that's this done up. I did also see that I dropped one of the PCI slot covers just here on top of the fan, so that's cool. I've moved that out of the way, put both of those back in. So look at that, guys. Let's just move that cable a bit more that way. That looks a bit tidier. There we go. There is an upgraded video card in the Mac Pro. This boot is the most nerve-wracking for all of the upgrade. With RAM, you know that you can fiddle about with it, get different configurations and reach something that's gonna work. With storage, I know my SSD works, and if it happens to blow up, I'll just use another SSD that I have. This is the only Mac Pro video card that is any better than the 7300 GT that I actually own. So if this doesn't work, then that'll be a big shame. Could have removed those hard disks as I was discussing. Oh, what on earth am I doing, guys? What on earth am I doing? There's not even DVI plugged into the damn thing. I haven't plugged the video in. Plug that in now. Well done, Thomas. So no video, but I hot plugged that DVI. So naturally, it's probably more sensible to just reboot. Yeah, I'm just gonna reboot. And I tell you what else I'm gonna do as well is yank some of these drives. Oh, but which one has the OS on it? That says it's Lion. Ah, do you know what? I'm just gonna leave those in. It doesn't matter. Okay. So the fan is spinning on the video card, which is really good, but please give us a picture. Yes! Oh my Lord. Result. It doesn't really matter what happens at all beyond this point. Seeing that Apple logo is the biggest deal. Absolute result. So again, this card is given to me by a friend of mine, Mitchell. If you're watching this, buddy, thank you so much. There was a mixture of working and non-working parts and all that stuff he gave me a good few years ago now. Got some other little bits from that bundle lurking around that will make their way into future videos as well. Now, I am going to be completely honest. As much as I absolutely adore the 5000 series generation of ATI cards, because it's just really special. I built a gaming PC at the time, first ever custom build, all from new parts, and I used a 5770 as the GPU, and it arrived dead on arrival.
My graphics card died, and then that happened with a good combination of nice glitches and graphics and everything, and that's been happening ever since. Kaput, basically.
I have a real soft spot for these video cards, and I think they were great video cards at the time. The inclusion of them, the 5770 and the 5870 in the 2010 Mac Pro was just great. Because we've removed the other GPU, we have now got this utility back. This one or this one would both be fine for us. It doesn't really matter because we don't have any other cards installed. Yeah, I would definitely want to see that utility again, so I don't know why you'd want to do that. We'll do that and restart, and then this card will be running at full speed. About this Mac, oh yeah, it does not show the graphics card in. Look at how sick that looks now, guys. We'll have to go more. ATI Radeon HD 5770, 1024 megabytes. I would have absolutely killed to have this video card in my 2008 Mac Pro. Back when I first got that thing, I would have loved this card. Now I've finally got it. So yeah, that's one nice thing about the way tech works, is if you really fancied something back in the day, you can sure as heck get it later on. And I know I was given this card, but even if I wanted to pick one of these up, they are, you know, just 30 quid on eBay. PCIe lane width, X16, PCIe bus, slot 1, everything is good. We are all happy. So let's do something a little bit interesting. Let's replay that animation. Wow, how magical is that? Now let's look at the slow motion. Do we, oh what? Oh my gosh, that example was meant to go a lot smoother than that. Friggin' hell, Lion, what are you doing? Okay, that's better. Yeah, that's buttery smooth now. That's buttery smooth. Look at you go. It still does that bug, but obviously that's not graphics related. That's purely the way that that animation is written to be tied to the dock. As it's fading in, you see, when you move your mouse away from the dock that hides itself, as Launchpad is fading in, that forces the dock to stay up because Launchpad is fading in. As Launchpad is fading out, the dock is hiding itself again, therefore the animation disappears because it's clearly tied to the dock there. Successful graphics upgrade. I'm doing all this in the wrong order, but who cares? Quartz, OpenGL, user interface test, do it. We were meant to do all this at the end, but who cares? Xbench was last updated 4 years before this graphics card made it into the Mac, so this isn't really a great test, but Quartz graphics, 25328, 24917. Okay, brilliant. OpenGL, 20121, 80.42. Hell yeah. User interface test, 224.39. User interface test, 289.24. Now that is purely an optimization thing there. The user interface test was based on stuff in Tiger, Panther, so you know we have an entirely almost different user interface, I guess. But we've seen for ourselves within the user interface just how much better the animations now are with that video card. And of course, you've gone from being able to not play any games at all to being able to play all the games from this kind of era on the Mac, which is nice. Even though we got a big boost on that OpenGL performance, it is like two and a half times quicker there is still a much more colossal difference than even that. The Xbench just can't leverage this GPU, obviously, and that's completely fine. Not bashing Xbench at all, but the benchmark is not quite new enough for this. There is probably an Intel benchmark that will run on Lion or Snow Leopard that I could use to test the graphics a bit heavier. I haven't really looked for one, to be honest, folks. So what I'm going to do now, do as I say, not as I do, I'm just going to kind of touch the RAM. Okay, yeah, that is absolutely friggin' boiling. That is really, really hot. Okay, fine. I guess we'll just see how it goes. The only time it's going to bother me is if A, the system is getting incredibly loud, or B, if the system becomes unstable because the memory is overheating. Whether those things actually happen or not, I'm not too sure. There is a similar amount of heat coming out the back of the machine. Not quite as much airflow. I'm presuming that's because I haven't got the side panel on. It's just one of those things where I'm going to keep an eye. So we've done the memory, we've done the video card. The rest should be, touch wood, and this just invites several problems to come for the rest of the video. The rest should be fairly straightforward. We've got to do optical drive, SSD, operating system, potentially second optical drive, maybe look to scrub off some of this pen. If we can try a little bit of alcohol or something on this, I'm not sure how that's gonna fare with the aluminium. But try and get some of that off. Get some hard drives taken out, get some other hard drives put in, possibly. But yes, the two kind of most unknown scary bits are done. And we've got a working 5770, so I am chuffed. I am really chuffed. I could boot up later on. I've got various games that would run on this. I've got Quake 4 that would actually be really nice on here. Half-Life 2. What else have we got? Something a bit newer, maybe? I've probably got something knocking around on my server that could potentially run on the 5770 that we would not be able to run on the 7300 GT. You can probably run both Quake 4 and Half-Life on this card. You definitely couldn't crank Quake 4 on this by any means. Pretty sure Quake 4 was also Intel only, if I remember rightly back in the day. I don't know if I could play that on my G5, because in my G5 that I had, which was the machine before I got the Mac Pro, I had the lovely GeForce 6800 Ultra, which was just a gorgeous card for the time. I had a 2004 G5, so that's 6800 Ultra DDL to give it its full title for the dual link displays. That card could run two 30-inch cinema displays, and it was a friggin' beast. It was as long as my arm.
GeForce 6800 Ultra graphics chip. It's a graphics card. It's a new graphics card. Yeah, I know. It has what's called dual link on it, which is two DVI connections running in parallel, because one DVI connection would only give you that. But it's even cooler, because we didn't just stop at one dual link. This card has dual link. And so you can have 8 million pixels off one Power Mac.
This thing can only run one cinema display. It can run one 30-inch. It's got a single link and one dual link there. So anyway, I'm gonna have to shut down this machine. We've spent a couple of hours on it this morning. It's been absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately I've got to go and do other things. I would love to just slam in this SSD now, get a Snow Leopard install sorted, but unfortunately we'll have to pick that up again. But lucky for you guys, it'll be fairly instantaneous. So yes, quick little break, and then we'll come and upgrade the rest. Okay guys, we are back, and I have been searching for my Snow Leopard DVD with not a huge amount of success, and I'm kind of gutted about that. I was fairly certain I hadn't received it back from whoever I lent it to, cannot remember. Next step now will basically be kind of trawling through old messages and emails to try and figure out who I lent it to, because I just can't remember. So, oh, come on. Does it have a lock? There we go. Yeah, that's cool. The lock actually locks the optical drive bay in as well. That's awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah, so because I can't find my DVD, we are going to do the next best thing, and that is burn our own DVD, which will be exactly the same thing. But the reason that I'm so, obviously, you know, Snow Leopard doesn't cost that much to buy if I wanted to get a retail DVD. Not that I particularly need to have a retail DVD. But it's more special to me because I got it on release, or pretty close to release, for my birthday back in 2009. I think I mentioned that earlier in the video. So it just is not a nice little, you know, sort of item that you'd want to keep, really, because I remember that vividly. It was a lovely little time. We could do this through USB or something, but I think we're just going to stick to old school. Sorry if you can hear that noise outside, by the way. It's bin day. Do you know what I've just seen that is going to be an absolute pain for us? That is, the disk image is larger than a DVD size. I was under the impression that Snow Leopard was massively smaller than Leopard because they stripped out all of the PowerPC binaries and everything was just a lot more streamlined in Snow Leopard. But this is a 6.59 gig disk image. It may just be easier for us to burn a dual layer DVD because I think I've got some of those in the drawer. Yeah, I'm gonna have a quick look for those. Oh, guys, we are in luck. Here we have a DVD plus R dual layer. I thought for a second I didn't have any, but what I had done is condensed a lot of separate smaller spindles down to one big DVD spindle. So I had a few different types of discs on one spindle. I should label that up to remind me in the future. So the disk image has transferred. We are now going to just do this the old school way through disk utility, which should, for this purpose, work just fine. Super drive, eject. So we'll pop in the dual layer DVD. These will do up to 8.5 gigs. So disk is recognized. That is a good start. Let's drag our image in, highlight, burn, maximum possible 8 times speed. That should be fine. Verify burn data, and then eject the disk. We will actually mount it at the end just so we can check that it works. This doesn't work for everything, but it should work for Mac OS X. This is also confirmation that the drive in here is quite happy to do dual layer DVDs at 8 times speed, so that's nice. As this DVD is burning, it's going to be a little while. Whoops, didn't put that on properly. We may as well get the SSD in this adapter here. So, as I demonstrated the other day, this is just as easy as sticking this into the enclosure. However, I do have this really bulky Velcro on the back of this drive that I think might need to come off. There's also a bit of dust on there. Let's just try it first. Yeah. That's not great. Oh, I don't know. No, that's fine. Oh, or is it? Do you know what? I'm going to take that Velcro off because it's not quite sitting in there flat. It's cool that this has kind of eject mechanism so you can get the drive out. This should just peel straight off. I never did come up with a better mounting solution than this thick Velcro in my PowerHack G4 Hackintosh that I built, which is what this drive is from, but they're so light you just don't need to. This was one place that I actually messed up a little bit back in the Hackintosh day. I really wanted to get both of these 128 gig drives and RAID them, if you guys remember, but getting it to work properly was just beyond my skill set. This is peeling the label off the drive as well, but that's not a problem. Oh, or is it? Yeah, it is. It's ripping the drive label, but do you know what? I just don't care about that. Ah, there we go. Okay, so I've ripped a bit of the label. It's all sticky and nasty, but who cares? This is probably going to live in here now till the end of time, unless I do anything substantially different with this machine, but I highly doubt it. Although I should learn to not say those kind of things because in reality, anything can happen with this sort of thing. So there we go. Drive is in, sits in there nicely. No nonsense. Lovely stuff. And then we get the cover on. There we go. That is the cover on quite nicely this time. And there's our little drive, looking good. So there's a bit more weight to that now. We can't put that in the Mac Pro yet because I still have all of the drive bays in the Mac Pro and it's powered up burning that DVD. So we'll leave it be for a second and then we can yank all the drives and just put this drive in because it won't matter about the other drive. The DVD is almost finished, so I thought I'd have a little look and see what was going on with these drives, and I'm actually quite glad. For some reason, the OS drive is in bay 2, and that aligns with what's written on the bay as well. That actually says OS 10.7 Lion on the bay. So that's really cool. We can just we'll remove 3 and 4 because we don't need them anyway, but we will remove and swap out bay 1 for this SSD. The reason that it matters and I like to retain it is because the little numbers are written in the bottom right corner, and my old Mac Pro, the numbers didn't align. I didn't have one of the numbers and then I had 2 of the same number, and that really annoyed me. It just wasn't perfect, but this machine is perfect. You have 1, 2, 3 and 4. The only thing that isn't perfect is the OS drive is in bay 2, whereas you would typically find it in bay 1. But that's fine. So the disk has burnt, but I did ask it to verify, so it's going to do that next, which could actually take quite a while with this disk. So after a little while, we have got all of the signs that the burn has been successful. So we chose to mount the disk instead of ejecting the drive. So that is why the installer has popped up here. And you can see it is that easy to create one of these. But I'm not going to speak too soon because anything could go wrong from this point forward. We're going to shut down the machine. We're going to pull the drive out. Hard drive is spun down because I left the system a little while, so that's why this has happened. I guess an advantage to putting the SSD in, that won't actually happen. But of course, we have disk utility open, and it means it's, in order for you to kind of browse around disk utility, it has to spin up all the drives. So I can hear them all spin up one by one. And the Mac Pro does spin them up one by one. So if you have 4 in here, it'll spin this one, this one, this one, all separately. So there we go, that explains that beach ball there. There is nothing particularly wrong with the system. Okay, so we'll just leave the disk in and shut down the machine because we're going to start yanking drives. So first things first, pull power. Second thing, we are going to pull the lock. Now this guy and this guy can come out completely. We will worry about putting those back in later. We'll leave this guy in because we've got some screenshots and stuff on that drive. That's the Lion drive. But this one, bay number 1, we are going to pull out and we will remove the drive. This is one of the stock original Apple drives, as you can tell by the little Apple stamp there on the label. It has been a good while since I've done one of these, so I've been quite excited. Now that is kind of common. I think it's an age thing. There we go. Yeah, the rubber tends to perish. Let's have a look at this other drive in the system just to see. Yeah, no wonder there's vibration going on with this machine. It looks like all of the rubber is gone. I'm pretty sure the rubber was present on the 1.1 Mac Pro. Anyway, makes no difference for an SSD because they don't vibrate anyway. So that's absolutely fine. We can just use these screws to screw it back in. Aha, yes, look, you can see all the kind of gloop. There we go. Yeah, I wasn't imagining things. They've perished over time, I guess, time and heat. That's pretty crazy. You could restore them. You could replace the rubber, just put any old rubber washers on there. That would do a similar trick. And if I was putting mechanical drives back in fact, I'm going to be putting some mechanical drives in this system, so I may look for some new rubber washers. That would actually be a pretty cool upgrade to do. So I guess it's the rubber that holds the screws in, because usually these screws don't come out. There'll be one rubber washer this side of the bracket and one rubber washer the other side. There we go. So that is that screwed in. And now all we need to do is place that into the system. There we go. We'll lock that in and plug the power cable in. Now all we do is boot up the system. It's booting from the hard drive. I can hear the hard drive. Looks like I wasn't quick enough on holding the option key there on startup. I wanted to show you guys the DVD and the boot drive, but I guess we'll just instead click on install macOS 10 from the desktop here. If there was no drive in the system, if there was no operating system installed on a drive in the system, it would have gone straight to the DVD drive after searching for a disk. So that's fine. Here we are back in Lion, and we'll just do it like this instead. Okay, yeah, it doesn't want to do that. That's fine. What we'll do instead then is start up disk, select the DVD, restart. Of course, it doesn't want to do that from that window. I'm guessing because we're on a newer version of OS 10. Kind of makes sense, I think. Here we go. So it's attempting to boot from the DVD drive now. Can hear the drive. Good. Apple logo. That is a damn good sign. You know you've messed up a burn when this doesn't happen. If the disk is bootable, that is 90% of the battle. That's not to say that it'll get through the entire installer. We've had many instances on the channel where I create a DVD like this and we don't get through the installer, but that is half the fun. And to me, for these older systems, it is still the most enjoyable way to install. Bringing you guys in a little bit closer to the monitor there. I do apologize for some not amazing angles in this video. Also apologize for the mucky state of this monitor. I need to give it a really good clean. There we go. Yeah, there's no way I am pulling this Dell monitor off the desk. It's just so handy. I know where I am with this. Nothing wrong with my newer monitor, and it'll be great for testing newer systems, but this trusty old Dell. Here we go. Check that out, guys. How delightful is that wallpaper? Absolutely delightful. So we're going to use English. The feeling of pure excitement for me to see this back in the day, because for anyone that wasn't watching me 15 years ago, and I don't blame you if you weren't, I had, ooh, it can't see the SSD, can it? That's interesting. Let's have a little look and see what's going on there. We're going to open disk utility. Let's find you here in the sidebar, and then I'll continue that other story. Here we go. There's the SSD. We're going to call this Macintosh SSD. There we go. Anyway, where was I? Yes, so one thing they changed with Snow Leopard was they finally, it wasn't free yet, that came later, but they finally made it more affordable. So at the time, I remember Leopard was around 70 or 80 pounds for a single user license where you'd get the DVD. For this, folks, we're not going to do the language translations or the printer drivers. We're not even going to do the fonts, to be honest with you. So just leave it at that, install, and that'll make it a bit smaller for us. So yeah, what I'm trying to explain here is Leopard at the time was 70 or 80 pounds, can't quite remember, for the retail DVD. And that was expensive. So I was running Tiger, and Tiger was the operating system that I had. And there was kind of no opportunity for me to be able to save up that kind of money to buy the operating system. Now I could have done that, but there was always something more interesting to buy. So as desperate as I was to get a newer version of macOS 10, Tiger was gorgeous. I just mainly wanted to update for sort of these reasons. You know, the interface was so brand new at the time. It looked absolutely gorgeous, and still to this day. Look at this interface, it is lovely. It just elevated, you know, Tiger looked the same as every other version of OS 10 that had come before it. The original Aqua interface was starting to show its age a little bit with the brushed metal and stuff. So when this came in, it was all smooth and space themed. It was really, really nice. And I was just desperate for that interface. And there were a couple of nice features, you know, obviously Time Machine was a big one. Spaces was a big one, even though I had an application that replicated Spaces on Tiger. And I also had a carbon copy cloner that replicated Time Machine pretty well on Tiger. Not replicated it, but did the same thing. Anyway, when Snow Leopard came around, it dropped down to, I believe, £29. And then that was, okay, yeah, I can ask for this for my birthday. It's a sensible thing. And I got Snow Leopard, and it was just lovely. Absolutely lovely. So even though I did a lot with Leopard back in the day, I skipped out on it. And this was sort of before I was doing the whole risking burning DVDs for my main machine and stuff like that. This was 2009, so I was just starting to sort of develop that kind of knowledge and attitude towards things. By the time 2010 was around, I was quite happily pirating all sorts and burning everything. I had no problem with it. So anyway, this is going to take a while. The nostalgia is hitting me quite heavily here, which is lovely. I'm going to go and make some food and stuff, I think, because this is from a DVD. We're going to be quite a while. It estimates 19 minutes, but I've got a feeling it's going to be a fair bit longer. Not hindered by the SSD, of course. We are hindered by the optical drive. Okay, wow. I just basically walked downstairs, put some eggs on to boil, did a tiny couple of bits and pieces, and now I'm back. That did not take long at all. I guess we did strip it right down, but I don't know, I mean, it's maybe about 10 minutes. It can't have been that quick, surely. There we go, United Kingdom time zone. I missed the intro video. I was downstairs. That's really annoying. But here we are in Snow Leopard. Just like that, we've transformed to a glorious OS. Wow, that's interesting. I did not know that Snow Leopard hid the desktop icons. I thought that came later. I really thought that came later. Let's have a little look at that for a sec. Wow. Yeah, it hides the icons. I did not know that was a Snow Leopard thing. That's definitely not a Leopard thing. When you install Leopard, the icons come up straight away. Let's see what version this is, actually. This is plain old 10.6. Nothing fancy going on here whatsoever. Let me enable zoom in quickly. So this is purely the original Snow Leopard. We need to get this updated. I'm presuming software update is still active. Interesting, a little bit of graphics tearing there. Let's increase that a little bit. Whack you all the way up, there we go. Okay, so let's have a little look and see. Just want to see how much space we've used on this drive. Yeah, this is tearing like mad. Available, we've used 5.41 gig, so tiny amount on this drive, still got 122 gigs available. Nice high capacity on these 128 gig drives, you get a lot of that 128 gig. Let's just update this. There is definitely something strange going on graphically, I would say. Interface is looking really kind of bloomed, there's a bit of tearing going on. Why would that be? Graphics and displays, 5770, not many options in the display there. Let's get this operating system updated anyway, to iron out the inevitable weirdness with the first version here. Here we go, show details of the updates. So yeah, we've got our iLife support, airport utility, combined update that'll take us up to 10.6.8. That is the latest version. That'll improve absolutely everything. That'll give us the App Store, because at the moment we have not got the App Store. No, Snow Leopard didn't ship with the App Store, that came later. Shipped with QuickTime 10 though, that was a big improvement. Well, it was like a sidestep at the time. It was one of those situations where you kind of needed to use both QuickTime 7 and QuickTime 10 for different tasks at the time, but there was a lot of cool innovation with QuickTime 10. Yeah, whatever, we'll just update everything. The main one is our macOS 10 update here. Just install this. There we go. That will install. So we're connected over Ethernet, shouldn't take too long. Yeah, with Snow Leopard, they added this dark background to the right-click menu in the dock. I always found that interesting because the standard right-click menu is still the normal color, but they did some cool things with the dock in Snow Leopard. Little tweaks, little tweaks. It was things like folders, like that. Graphics is not running nice. Does Snow Leopard not have any 5770 drivers? Proper drivers? I need to look at all this, don't I? I should have looked that up, because Lion ran buttery. It just feels like it doesn't know what it's doing graphically. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, the fans have gone absolutely bonkers, but that might have something to do with the side panel being open. Never mind, we'll figure that out. I'm not too bothered about that. One really good thing is the graphics is now sorted. As soon as it rebooted, it looked fine. And I realized when I finished recording that previous clip, the 5770 was included in the 2010 Mac Pro. So Snow Leopard would have been the current OS. So it's clear that support for the 5770 and presumably 5870 wasn't fantastic in the original version of Snow Leopard, but now that we've updated, we have actually got proper support, which is good. If we just have a quick look, the fans have spun down now. That's interesting. That went a bit strange, didn't it? Yeah, it seems a bit happier now. We have a refresh rate selector and a rotation drop down that we didn't have before. So that is good. And the graphics is now working perfectly. If we go back to that stack, it is now super buttery smooth once again, which is really good. Even a transition between the animations there. So that's perfect. That's Snow Leopard all updated. I'm just going to run this one more time just to see if there are any other little bits. Yeah, there's a lot more to come. Security updates and that now that we're on this higher version. Okay, that makes sense. We'll install all that as well. There we go. That can work through that. So I've got to go to work, so I'm going to call this a day for today. I'm just going to let this run. Bit of a shame, I would like to tinker on with this a fair bit longer today because I'm in the zone now, but never mind. Should be able to carry on tomorrow with this. It is so snappy, guys. It's super, super quick. SSD, Snow Leopard. Ooh, we need to enable trim as well, don't we? Yeah, we'll have to remember to do that tomorrow. Okay, no problem. We are back, and I thought I would leave this a lovely little message on the screen here for you guys. Quite enjoyable. Adobe Flash Player is out of date. Excellent. So we're going to see to this trim enable stuff because it is extremely important and so easy to forget because the system runs beautifully for a little while, but then it doesn't take long for it to bog down. So a quick way to check, we can come into Serial ATA, and then we have got our hard drive and our SSD. On the SSD, we've simply got trim support, no. So under various versions of macOS, there are programs that can enable trim, but it's easier to just do it from the terminal. So if we launch terminal, I'm gonna nip to Google to find the correct command because I believe the sudo trim support enable command does not work properly in Snow Leopard. That could just be for later versions of macOS, but I'm going to double check. Google is always the answer. Ah, right, okay, because Safari is so ancient, it's not going to open anything. I'll just type the command in. Let's have a look. How long is it? It's funny, I've got this long command that I'm seeing on this site. I can't open it in Safari here. And also I'm so accustomed to using things like the clipboard, you know, across your machines and stuff that we all just take for granted now. So me just getting a basic string of text from my phone onto this computer is not that straightforward at the moment. So this is going to be interesting. I think the best thing for me to do is to just download a slightly newer browser. So one really nice thing is, even though we don't have all of these fancy new features where we can copy from our phones and paste on our Macs and do all sorts of various things, we can still really easily talk to other systems over the network. So I'm going to download a browser on my main machine and then we will install it on Snow Leopard. In fact, what I'm going to do, just quickly enable file sharing on here so that I can dump files onto this machine. Just copied this over. Let's have a little look. See what we got going. Use interweb as my default browser. Yeah, after like 10 seconds of Googling, it became clear that this was the best browser to use for Snow Leopard, although I'm not sure I'm using the correct version, which is fine. We'll just do the trim thing for now. That's the only reason why I want the browser. Okay, here we go, enabling trim. That was fun. Let's go back into the terminal and we'll start copy and pasting all of these commands. Please enter your password. I think I should point out here that just randomly go into any kind of website, copy and pasting a load of commands from that page into your terminal is not the best idea for any kind of main machine. But for all of this old school tinkering, it doesn't really make much of a difference, because if you mess something up, this is only really a tinker system anyway. There we go. Okay, fantastic. So after a restart, we have trim support enabled, which is really good. Now I'm going to show you guys live on camera because that was blazing. I'm going to show you a shutdown and then a cold boot, essentially. Check this out with the SSD. And actually, what I'm going to do is remove the remove that Lion drive because we don't need it. Okay, so that is unplugged. Check this out. 3, 2, 1, go. Bearing in mind this is only a SATA revision 2 bay, so 3 gigabit per second bay. There's the bong, and there's, oh, we still have the DVD in as well, do we? No, we don't. What's making that noise then? Ah, video card fan. It spins up the video card to 100%. Check that out. That boot is insane. That boot is absolutely insane. So just one more check. Trim support, yes. Cool. So we're all sorted there. The other drive is gone. Yeah, I'm just constantly checking the graphics. It's so quick. Everything is so quick. It's kind of throwing me off a little bit. Hey guys, another difference is you don't get that additional pop-up now. So that additional thing was introduced in Lion, you know, the show your specs window before you get to System Profiler. It doesn't exist in Snow Leopard and prior, so it's easy to forget these little things, but more info would take you to that, you know, albeit, you know, slightly handy but a little bit pointless window before you get to the more in-depth System Profiler. So yeah, obviously you can check all the same things and more in here, but it is a little bit more confusing for your average user. It's easier for them to check what's going on with their RAM and display and stuff on System Profiler. And hey, I've just seen another, oh man, I've just seen another thing. I just attempted to make that window bigger by coming to the edge of the window, and we don't have that yet. That's a later feature. So back in Snow Leopard, we've still got the little corner piece, and this was a staple Mac thing back in the day. Little corner piece, and that's how you resize your windows. You can't resize them from the top. You can only move them. You can't resize them from the side or bottom. How incredible is that? Just this little corner piece. That is awesome. Is it applied to the Finder as well? Yeah, every window. Every window. You wanted to change the size of a window, you grab it from the corner. Amazing. This is all these little things that makes it feel so Mac. It just feels like really lovely, just like back in the day. And this interface, Gorgeous. Constantly getting sidetracked, but we are sorted with our main kind of fundamental hardware parts now. So we've got all our memory completely sorted. Here we have it, our 32 gigs of RAM. We have our graphics card sorted, which is now working properly and fully happy because it has the correct version of the OS running now that actually supports the card. And we have our main boot drive installed in the first bay, bay 1, with trim support now enabled, which is excellent. And last but not least, we are running the operating system of our choice. So the only stuff left to do is, at least hardware-wise, is get the storage drives in and get the optical drives in if I do want to change these optical drives. I think the one that's in here now, I'm going to keep it, and then I'm going to add an additional one because this drive has been working perfectly for everything that I've thrown at it. It was a nice ultimate test, doing a lovely dual layer DVD, burning and reading, absolutely no problems through the installation, no issues whatsoever. So in that scenario, plus the fact that I've done DVD projects for people on this system beforehand without any issues, that is an optical drive kind of proving itself to me already there. So it needs a bit of a clean, but I'm definitely going to keep that one. We'll just add a second drive underneath it, which will be cool. It is finally time to look at our hard drive situation for this machine. So we have two Seagate drives, which are presumably drives that were put in afterwards. They are not Apple stamped at all, and they are not original drives in the machine. Can't find a date on the label. They've got a date code, but can't find an obvious date. These drives, the Hitachi Desk Stars, these are both Apple stamped, and they were made in July 2006. So definitely old drives, but these were probably a BTO option for this machine when it was ordered. So these are 250 gigs a pop. These are 500 gigs a pop. So this machine would have come with a 250 gig drive in the stock configuration. And if this was a BTO option, which it definitely looks like it is because they've got the same date code, the same manufacture date, sorry, and they're both Apple stamped drives, it looks like this was configured right out of the gate with a terabyte of storage, which is pretty cool. I think what we should do is retain these drives. It's not every day that you get drives that have got the Apple stamps on them. You've got two matching ones. They're quite a high capacity for the age of the machine. I think it would be rude not to use them. I've got bigger drives, and I did have visions of me installing some of the drives that I had in my previous Mac Pro. So I had a load of WD Blacks, and I've held on to those drives because they were just really special. I had to save up and buy each one of them, and I expanded my Mac Pro as I was making more and more video content. So they are really special to me, but at the same time, these are really cool. So I think we should retain these. We've got pretty much original everything-ish Apple in the machine, apart from the memory, and obviously the SSD is pushing the boat out a little bit as well, but we've retained the Apple video card, and when we look at the optical drives in a minute, you guys will see that I've gone for Apple stamped optical drives as well. So I think it's just cool to include what came with the machine, or what came with a Mac Pro at some time. So we're going to take these two Seagate drives away, lower capacity, and there's nothing special about these. I've got a load of these Seagate drives hanging around. Plus, one of them has writing all over it, and I don't like that. If you're going to label up a drive, simply stick another label on it. Preferably keep it in a document that is completely away from the drive, but if you have to label up a drive, stick a label on it and then write on it. Don't write all the way across the drive label. It's just pretty nasty. So I've been thinking a little bit on these screws and these rubber washers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the two Hitachi drives in the Mac Pro just as they are. I'm not going to bother doing any rubber washers. I'm going to get them set up. We'll set them up in a mirrored pair. Now, obviously they are ancient drives, and we're not going to be storing any kind of crucial or personal or important data on these drives whatsoever. It's just going to be here as a bit of an extra storage pool. This machine's going to be doing video work, so it'll be a handy place to send all that video to when we're importing video and stuff. And obviously a little scratch disk for anything that I need it for. So we'll put them in a mirrored pair. That way you have a little bit of redundancy within the box. But what we'll also do, because we're running Snow Leopard, we will it's already installed. We will set up Time Machine, and we will share Time Machine to my server so that we have an active backup of the machine every time, every hour, or every time we boot it up. So what's really important to me is retaining these drive sled numbers. 2, we need to use that one, and 4, we don't need to use that one. So we're going to slot 4 back into the machine. Quite a frustrating aspect of this is we can't slot the drive sled in with its screws captive in there like it usually is because of the perished washers. This is 3, So we're gonna slot this into 3. At this stage, it doesn't matter where they go. Most of them are blank anyway, and we will be erasing them to set them up from scratch once again. And here is our second drive sled. Looking at this drive is kind of unlocking a bit of a memory for me. I'm not 100% certain, I'm really not, but I'm pretty sure, I have a strong hunch that it was a Hitachi DeskStar drive in my 2004 G5, or 2 of those, and I think they were 250 gigs a pop in the G5. That's the machine I had before the Mac Pro. And I remember I filled those up, and I had to replace, these are a little bit awkward without because they're not captive anymore. I had to replace one of the 250 gig drives with the WD Black. That's right. So it was before the Mac Pro, I got the first WD Black. I put it into the G5, and then when I got the Mac Pro, I swapped that WD Black over to the Mac Pro. But I think that machine, I think the G5 did have very similar drives to this. I'm no expert. I haven't had a lot of these machines come my way. I've only had experience with this one and the one that I owned back in the day. But they must have been using these Hitachi drives, if my memory is correct. They must have been using them for quite a while on the Pro Towers.
So here is the beast. It is ginormous. It's this drive that we're taking out. One interesting thing about this drive, guys, is it's got the little Apple logo on it. It's Apple branded. So these 2 drives, like I said, are identical. This one and the one that's remaining in there for now. And so it must have been configured with 500 gigs. Right from the factory, which is epic, you know?
So there's that drive. Now these are going to be noisy as anything. They're going to be super, super loud because there's no isolation. We've heard all that already anyway, booting up this machine with the 4 drives. So what we'll do now is we'll boot up the machine, make sure we can see the 2 hard drives. We will look at their status in disk utility because we'll get a little bit of smart reporting about them. If everything is okay, no errors, I'm not going to go too much into it. We'll go straight to erasing, create the RAID, and then we will have a lovely 500 gigabyte mirrored pair here. And that should work out nicely. I'm not going to need any more than that. Oh, machine was accidentally connected to power the whole time. That's not great, but shouldn't matter too much. So we can hear those drives spin up straight away. And there's the bong. There they go, lovely. So that was still a really nice boot up because the machine tends to spin the drives up before it bongs. You still get a really nice quick response with the grey Apple screen and then getting to the desktop. I've been editing this video as I go, by the way, guys, and I just want to apologise for the less than ideal camera angles for the screen. They've been even worse than usual. You can't really see what I'm doing, but hopefully I do an okay job of describing what's happening. So a good start. You can see that we have the drives on the desktop here. So we've got the SSD and then we've got the 2 untitled drives. So that one is empty. And then I'm presuming this one is empty. Yeah, that's also empty. So whatever I had stored on here, just a couple of video bits, was on one of these 250 gig drives. So let's jump into disk utility. And I just want to take a look at each drive individually and see what kind of status. Actually, let's jump into System Profiler first. I just want to see that everything is showing up okay here. So there we go, that's one Hitachi drive. This is in bay number 2, so that is correct. Okay, lovely, everything is looking good in here. Bay number 3, that is perfect. It's a shame that we're not filling all the bays. I kind of wish I had a third one, that would be super cool. But there's just no benefit or no point at all in putting anything in that 4th bay. It leaves one kind of swappable bay as well, if you like. If you need to put another drive in to temporarily transfer some data, even though you'd probably do that all externally, it does leave you a little bit of wiggle room. Say, for instance, if one of the drives in the mirrored pair was to fail and you wanted to replace it with another 500 gig, you could easily just plop that in and you know, away to go, or transfer data away from the mirrored pair entirely, or whatever the case may be. Let's do a verify disk on this guy. This might take a little while, I'm not too sure. I haven't done this in a long time. The volume untitled appears to be okay. Cool. Verify disk. This is on the 2nd drive. The volume untitled appears to be okay. So as far as disk utility can tell us, everything is fine with these hard drives. Now there are other utilities that you can get. There are utilities that can read the smart data, and then it would tell us things like how long these drives have been powered on and other drive related stuff, but we're just going to go for it. We're going to make the pair. Both drives are working. There is no reason for us not to. If it was anything crucial, I wouldn't use these anyway, so that's no problem. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over to RAID, and we're going to call this, I'm just going to call this Macintosh HD, because we have We have Macintosh SSD, so let's get Macintosh HD appearing there. So we want a mirrored set. By the way, macOS refers to RAID as mirrored RAID set, striped RAID set. This is essentially RAID 1. This is your classic RAID 1, everything is mirrored. This striped is RAID 0. So this would get us double the speed, but half the reliability of a single drive, whereas this gets us double the reliability and is not really so slow. So that's fine. It's been a long time since I've made a RAID. I think we can just drag the disks in here, and then we will increase the block size because it's going to be video data we're working with, and that should do us just fine. Let's create that. Are you sure you want to create a RAID set with the selected disks? Creating a RAID set deletes all data on the selected disks. The data on these disks will be deleted, and here's our 2 hard drives, both identical, which is nice. Create. That is the RAID completed. So on the desktop, you can see we've had success creating Macintosh HD, and in the side here, you can see the 2 drives, you can see the 2 RAID slices, and then here is our drive. I love all the detail. Disk utility is great. It got a little butchered later on in terms of the interface and functionality, in my opinion, but just look at this. Look how easy it is to set all this up. It is very visual. It's very obvious what's going on. So yeah, that is absolutely perfect. And then you can do all your various first aid stuff on the RAID itself. So you can select the RAID and then you can verify, repair, just like you would with a single drive within disk utility here. This was the sort of go-to Apple tech support thing. I'm not sure if it's like this anymore, but it would be anything that was wrong with your machine. It would be like, go and check the permissions, verify disk permissions, repair disk. Just mash all these buttons in disk utility until your computer hopefully works and we don't have to help you further. Quite funny. Anyway, there we go. We're done in disk utility. So here we have the drive or the RAID. And let's just copy something to it as a test. I think it'd be quite cool to copy something sort of biggish. So I've got a 2.5 gig copy of Resident Evil Afterlife, or 2.25 gigs. There we go. So that's coming over the network. There we go. Performance, not too bad there at all. And I'm just going to do some playback from the disk as well. Scrub to somewhere in the middle. Yeah, so this scrubs around the film just fine. I just wanted to do a quick sanity check with the drives, but they are functioning, so that is good. What we will do now is we'll set up our time machine. So if we go into system preferences, and this will be good as well because we will capture obviously the OS and absolutely everything. So that's going to be really handy to restore stuff in the future if we need to. Let's turn time machine on, and we are going to select time machine on Scaro for this guy. Use for backup. Connecting. This just purrs away and works in the background beautifully. This is running to my Synology NAS at the moment. My Mac Mini in the rack is currently not set up. Well, it's set up, but it's not working correctly. We need to delve into that machine in the future. That's not been working correctly for a long time, so I've been running Synology from all my Macs, running Time Machine for all my Macs via Synology. So all we need to do is hit backup now, and this will start the first backup. So I'm going to let this run, and then we'll come back and see if it all completes just fine. And that just means we've got that little bit of extra protection over the data. So if we do a big import, let's say for instance, we do a big video import, and even though we've got the mirrored setup, let's say the RAID just pukes all over itself, or one drive goes and it brings the whole thing down, and we have no redundancy in the box, it's likely that I'll have a strong backup via Time Machine, because I can just either mash backup now, or it backs up hourly automatically anyway, and it'll just keep dragging that data through the network right the way into my server, and I can access those files as individual files then from any other machine as well, or restore the machine when I replace the drives. So plenty of options and a good backup solution here, especially for what is primarily a Tinker machine anyway, but this will be doing some important work from time to time in the form of video imports and things. There we go. There's the disk appeared on the desktop. That's our Time Machine backup. Cool. I'm going to let this run. It's not going to take very long. 7.22 gigs. I've emptied the recycle bin. I've emptied the trash. So that's cool. I've emptied the waste paper basket. We are all backed up. I took quite a while with my little break there. So oldest backup, 11:17, that's when it backed up. Then it backed up again an hour later. and now I am back. It's going to do another backup at 5 to 1. It is currently 24 minutes past 12. So Time Machine is working wonderfully. Nice thing about Time Machine is even though it's very simple, we've spoken about the other options on the channel extensively in the past in various videos. There are apps that you can get kind of far more granular than Time Machine. But the beauty of Time Machine is it's built into the OS and it is very simple. It's just set and forget. You may not have some of the more intricate options, but for 99% of users, everything is here that you need. And we all know what Time Machine is by now, but I think one of the coolest features to point out is you can do exclusions. So it's not just a complete and utter clone. If you do have a drive that you don't want to include, or even a folder that you don't want to include, let's say you don't want to include your movies folder or whatever, you can just exclude it and it won't back it up. But that backup will still be fully usable. And then within a macOS 10 installer, you can still use the Time Machine backup to restore the entire machine. Just a great, great feature that was introduced in Leopard. One thing I was also reminded of as well, after I finished recording the last clip, was with these Mac Pros, because we've got the option of 4 hard drives, I remember people back in the day slotting in a random hard drive into a bay that was further on, maybe bay 3, bay 4, if they had a couple of drives in the machine, and then they'd use that as a Time Machine drive. That was completely valid, works just fine. Instead of pointing to an external drive or a network drive, you just point to another internal drive and it backs up in exactly the same way. Then if your primary hard drive dies, you can then restore from the Time Machine backup to your new replacement hard drive. All of that functionality will work perfectly, and it's really convenient in a way because all of that is within the box. It's completely, there's no external stuff to worry about. They can't become disconnected. They are married there forever, really easy. But I never did that. And one of the main reasons was, in my eyes, one of the benefits to Time Machine was having that backup completely separate from the machine. So for me, I didn't get into network Time Machine until a lot later. So it was always external drives, and it was comforting to know that I could take that drive anywhere and I'd have those files. The other thing as well, as unlikely as it is, this is a very specific scenario, but it was always in the back of my mind that if there was a power supply fault, whether it was a random fault with the power supply or whether there was a voltage spike or a surge or something like that, the power supply went and it took some of the internal hardware with it, there's a chance that you can wipe out your internal and your Time Machine backup simultaneously. Extremely, extremely unlikely, but because they both are relying on the same power supply in the same machine, you kind of have that slight disadvantage there. So if I was to do an internal Time Machine, I would most definitely do another backup as well, even though 2 copies is always good. Well, completely necessary, to be honest, of any data that's important or very personal. I would look at that even more if I had an internal in-the-box Time Machine backup. But yeah, that's just a little bit of something that I remembered from back in the day. So what we're going to do now, guys, is shut this down and we're going to finally upgrade the last item, and that is the optical drive. So let's pull the optical drive out and take a little look at what we've got. So unlike the handy hard drives that were already in the system that we've just slightly repurposed, the optical drive is something that I needed to hunt for. So in the machine already, we have the drive that came with it. This is a Sony DVD rewriter, or super drive as Apple would call it. Again, these are still IDE drives in these 1,1, 2,1 and 3,1 Mac Pros. We're quite dusty, but check this out, guys. I had this in my Christmas stocking. This is a little mini Hoover. I'm going to give this a go. I've got a handy USB port under the desk here. Now, you should never, ever use vacuuming in computers. Really, it's not great. You can build up a static field, build up a static charge, kill stuff. But as always, do as I say, not as I do. Let's give this a go. Wow! I don't really know what I was expecting there, but that's pretty great. That's crazy. That's pretty much filled the tank. Oh, look at that. That's quite nasty, isn't it? One thing I want to be adding to this setup is something I've thought about a lot, is I want reusable canned air, reusable compressed air, So I want to get an electric compressed air thing so that I don't have to keep using cans, and that gets expensive and it's not good for the environment. So if I can get a nice electric air blower and then some kind of vacuum as well, because even though you're not really meant to vacuum this sort of thing, it's handy just for mess that gets left on the desk and stuff. If I can get a small, I might look at a small Henry. I know you can get smaller Henrys, and I think that might be quite cool. I could mount him on the shelf up here and have his hose coming down and then just hoover up whatever I need to hoover. That would be pretty cool. Anyway, back to this. I'm going to get a little bit more of this dust out. We're not going crazy on the cleaning today because I thought about the format and the way that I want to finish this video off. And I think what would be good is if we get everything working, and then once it is all working and we are happy, I will then go in and do the finishing touches. So we'll go in, we'll clean the machine, and then we will install the hard drive washers at the same time. So I'll order some of those. Okay, let's get into it. Here we have the optical drive. This is a Sony drive, and as you can see, it has the Apple stamp on it. So this would have been the drive that came with the system. Default drive, no bells, no whistles. On these sleds, Apple give you 4 screws on the back here to upgrade the drive. So you can see the 4 screws that are in it already on the sides. Then you've got the holes where you would mount the second drive. All of the cabling is in the machine already. It is very, very easy to upgrade the optical drive. So let's dig out what I found. Here I have, from my stash of random junk, another Mac Pro optical drive cage. And in here I have 2 drives. So taking a little look at what we've got, we have got, let's look at this one first. These are both Apple stamped drives. This is a Pioneer. This one is a lovely, lovely drive. A little bit newer than this Mac, so this would do really well. However, I happen to find another Sony. So this one again is a little bit newer. Where's the manufacture date? This was manufactured February 2008. So this could have been in a 2,1 or 3,1 Mac Pro, I guess. And this one was manufactured July 2006. So that shows you the difference. This was most likely put in a 3,1 2008 machine. Yeah, most definitely actually, because 2008, the 3,1 had replaced the 2,1. It's not going to be from a 2009 machine because it's still IDE and they swapped to SATA. So we're going to get this one unscrewed, and we're going to use the screws so that we don't lose them. We'll screw this Pioneer drive back into the drive sled. Now, I really like the Pioneer drives. They are really, really good drives. I was going to say they're super drives. They are fantastic drives. Oh, I need the other screwdriver. There's a Sony in this 1,1, and I'm going to add another Sony. Yes, it's a newer drive, but they can be good friends. And even though they're different models, it's likely that if I'm doing duplications, there will be, I guess, maybe less discrepancy between the 2 drives, although it really doesn't work like that. If I was putting 2 identical drives in, that would be different, which you could do when you were ordering these. You could obviously build to order your second optical drive, which is quite cool. So there's the Sony drive. Let's put that over there. That's what's going to be going in our machine. Let's get this guy in here for another day. I do have a lot of optical drives. When I was looking for these, I've got stacks and stacks, mainly that have come out of machines that I've upgraded for better optical drives in the past. So Power Macs especially. I'll pull out like a combo drive or a really slow CD rewrite drive and just put in a nice super drive every time, really, because you just want to have the option to read DVDs. Not always burning DVDs, but the option to at least read the DVDs. So I do have this surplus of, well, quite useless optical drives, to be honest. And every time I hunt for something like this, it just reminds me constantly how much I need to go through this stuff. Because they will sell as well, especially if they're an Apple stamped drive. It's an official replacement part or spare part for these Power Macs. So if somebody's doing an original rebuild, or someone just needs a drive because theirs is broken or whatever, when you start selling stuff like that, it is surprising how many people come out of the woodwork that still actually need this stuff. One thing that kind of dawned on me was, even though we're going to be doing all the cleaning afterwards, this optical drive is going to be installed in the lower bay, so I'm not really going to be able to get to it. There's no point taking the optical drive out again once we've got it in. That's just a waste of time. So let's make sure this drive is nice and clean going in. It's pretty clean anyway. Nowhere near as dirty as the existing one in the machine. A point to note about these is, if you take a look at the fronts, you'll notice that there's no bezel that you'd see on the PC equivalent drive. So you haven't got this cover piece here. They are purposefully not included in the Mac Pro drives. And if you upgrade the drive and you get an off-the-shelf drive that was intended to be put in a PC, you need to take this cover off on the Mac Pro, most definitely, and on pretty much all the Power Macs as well, because you've got the little flap at the front. They will not operate with that cover plate on. So they just pop off, and they can be popped back on all optical drives as well. This stuff is all incredibly obvious, but it's been a long time since a lot of us have probably looked at anything like this, so it's nice to just remember this stuff. Some of you, however, will be looking at stuff like this and stuff even older than this every single day. Tell you what, there is no point pulling any of this back out. Let's just clean it all now. My little vacuum did a great job with the big clumps, but the general dust buildup needs a good cloth. Okay, cool, that's looking a million times better. How are we looking in the side of the Mac Pro? Let's have a look. Not great. Let's get this guy going. Do you know, there's a horrible smell coming off this. It's only USB, but it still smells like electrical burning. Awesome. That thing is absolutely crazy. That is looking good. Let's put this drive in the little drive sled. Move my mini vacuum out of the way for the moment. There we go. That's a little bit of a squeeze. Cool. So as you can see, even though they are different models, because they're both Sony drives, they look pretty much the same in the front there, which is really cool. Eject button is another redundant thing in the Macs. Although the drive will obviously eject if you press that when the Mac is running. The old original G3, G4 towers, they have got the mechanical button on the front. And then the Quicksilver, I believe, was the first Pro desktop that ditched the use of the button entirely. So let's line up those holes on the side there. The great thing about the Mac Pro as well, the more of this stuff you add, so the optical drive, the extra hard drives, even the extra RAM, the heavier and heavier the tower gets. It is an extraordinarily heavy machine anyway. And then you pack it full of this stuff. And I just felt that now, that is super bulky and chunky. It just makes the machine really heavy. Ooh, I know one thing that I forgot to mention, something really important about upgrading the optical drive in this machine. Because we're still on IDE, we have jumper settings. So with SATA, it makes no difference. You stick in any drives you want, just like the hard drives in this machine, and they'll all be recognized. There's no problem at all. But of course, these are still ATA drives. So we have our jumpers on the back, and both of these are set to CSEL, which stands for cable select. So that is where you want your jumpers, and that will then, the IDE bus on the machine itself will determine then the master and the slave. You have not got to worry about it. It's basically wherever they're plugged into, and you can only plug these in one way. You can't make the drives opposite. So that's all fine, as long as your jumpers are on cable select. They're like SATA drives in the way that they're just plug and play then. But if you've got an older drive from somewhere else that may be configured as a master or something like that, the jumper will need to be moved on the back of the drive. Or similarly, if the jumper is missing entirely, that may also cause problems. So let's plug this guy in. This cable is labeled Foxconn. That's incredible. There we go. I was wondering if it was labeled top and bottom. It is on the IDE drive. Look, you've got top and you've got bottom there. So we know that we are going in like this on the bottom. Oh, wild. Okay. This cable is actually backwards compared to the IDE cable. That goes in there and that goes in there. Interesting. Okay. That's fine. This is my first time adding a second optical drive into a Mac Pro, by the way. There we go. That is in. I tell you what we'll do as well is we'll put the side panel on for the first time in a while. I do apologize about the beeping that you're hearing. That is my UPS. I need another replacement battery, but it's gonna have to wait because I want far more fun things first. We can remove this plastic. There we go. Some of you guys may have chosen to keep that on, but let's just remove that. It's such a beast with the door on, isn't it? Okay, let's boot the machine up. Let's get some power into it and let's power it up, see what happens. So I can hear the hard drive spinning up. That's all good. There's the bong. So let's take a little look. First of all, let's just go straight away to the eject. Hey, here we go. Open upper super drive or open lower super drive. That is a really good sign. Let's go to about this Mac. And then in ATA, we have, yeah, this one is badged as Sony, but man, that could not be, that model number is so different, isn't it? So different. But most of this is like OEM, you know, stamp whatever name on it, I guess. But yeah, that's fine. The drive looks the same, so that's all good. Yeah, sweet. So we've got 2 drives displaying. I think I will show you guys the drives. So you ready for the moment of truth? Let's open the top one. We know the top one works. Open upper. There she goes. Now let's open the lower one. There she goes. Okay, so we've got 2. I'm going to close the upper one and let's test the bottom one. So we know the upper one works perfectly. Let's pop this Snow Leopard DVD in the bottom one. And the reason I'm using that one is because it is a dual layer DVD. So if it works with this, we're golden. Okay, interesting. It is not reading that disk. Okay, no, nothing. That's not working. Let's try it in the upper drive. Pop that in the original drive. Obviously we know this works because it's how we installed the OS, but I'm just doing a little sanity check here that it spins up and loads. Okay, there it goes on the top one. So the top is fine. Okay, so we've skipped forward a little bit here. Unfortunately, I've lost the last clip. This camera is frustrating because if the battery runs out when you're mid-recording, it doesn't always finish off the clip properly and you just can't access it on the SD card at all. I knew it had happened straight away because I went back, looked at it, and it couldn't access the files. So in the last clip, you guys saw it read the dual layer DVD in the top drive. So then what I did was I went to get a normal DVD and I put it in the bottom drive to test the normal DVD playback. And it works just fine in the bottom drive. So the bottom drive is working. Dual layer DVDs can be super fussy anyway, because it's working correctly in the drive it was burnt in. But there's a potential that if I was to burn the dual layer DVD in the bottom drive, then that DVD that I burn would only work in the bottom drive. Not necessarily, they should work in all drives, but it isn't always that straightforward, especially with dual layer. But with normal DVDs, this should be fine. There's been no issue with the drive loading this. It loaded it quickly. The playback is absolutely fine. Everything is perfect. So I've got no reason to believe that there's any fault with the bottom drive, but obviously time will tell. And I have that other drive sitting there on the floor, just in case I do need to swap it. So I'm not going to burn a DVD just for the sake of it, just for testing purposes. I don't think that's really a useful thing to do. I will soon find out when I actually come to use the machine for a real project. So that is the optical drive upgrade done with most success. We're kind of 90% there with that. It's just going to involve a little bit more testing later on down the road. Of course, actually, I'll put that back in for a minute. I'm going to eject the top one as well because I need to show off the benefit of actually having 2 drives. The benefit is, let's just go back to this Snow Leopard DVD because it's the only other thing I've got here. Ow. Jam my thumb in the case. So I'm popping that film back in and popping the Snow Leopard DVD back in. You can see there's the film. And now suddenly, any minute, there's the Snow Leopard DVD. So you can use both drives at the same time, and just like you can with hard drives, you can simultaneously use them to do different things. A very normal thing 15, 20 years ago, but these days pretty much unheard of. People don't even need 1 optical drive, let alone the use of 2 simultaneously. But the possibilities were endless back in the day. We were using optical media for absolutely everything. And even for these days, burning and whatnot, having the flexibility of using 2 drives, using one to test playback, the other one is burning, that is all completely possible now with the 2 drives in here, which is cool. And we can eject both of these simultaneously. So this highlights once again some of the beautiful things about the Mac Pro, because if you guys can imagine, the G5 came out in 2003. If you were to pick one of these up in 2007, you've maybe had the G5 for 3 or 4 years and you're upgrading, depending on the kind of work you do and what you find useful, I suppose. But the expansion in this was far, far better. As much as we all love the G5, it is a beautiful machine. It was revolutionary. You're doubling the capacity for hard drives, so you can install 4 instead of 2, and you're doubling the capacity for optical drive. Instead of 1 optical drive on its own, you can now install 2. And the funny thing was, you could only install 1 optical drive through the original PowerMac range, because that bottom drive that looks like a normal drive from the outside, that was for a zip drive. Okay, that's cool, fair enough. With the MDD, the mirror drive dual power Mac G4, you could install 2 optical drives, and that was a huge deal. But when the G5 came, there was not enough room in the case, and you could not do that at all. There was only 1 optical drive bay. So it's one heck of a difference going back to 2 optical drive bays in this. Yeah, again, sounds absolutely ridiculous talking about it now, but back then, huge deal. So pretty much what's left to do now is find some appropriate washers for these screws. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find some online, hopefully grey in colour because the originals were grey. We'll order some of those. Then when they come in, we'll put those on the hard drives. We'll give it a full dust out, full clean, and then we'll do all the final benchmarks and really get this guy going. Maybe load up a little cheeky game as well, just to have a little look. I'm thinking something like Quake 4, maybe something a little bit newer. I might have something newer that we can really push this 5770 with, hopefully. Okay, I've been calling these rubber washers through the whole video. But I thought I would just show you guys a closer look. I've stolen this photo off eBay. They are, in fact, grommets. As you can see here on the screw, the drive sled is designed to go... So usually, this is what makes them captive as well, because they can't move out of the sled because there's a grommet in the way. So you've got this non-threaded portion of the screw at the top, as you can see clearly there, which is cool. And then the grommet sits here. The drive sled sits there so that you've got rubber above and at the bottom. So it's very much more involved than just putting a rubber washer on. Now, these on eBay are £5 for 4, which is ridiculous. And of course, I've already got the screws. And if you just take a little look at that, the rubber is not looking too great anyway. It's sort of my view, if mine has perished, then it's likely that a lot are perishing out there. Although if these haven't been in the machine, it could be a different scenario, but it's still not looking amazing there, is it? What I have done quickly, because I don't seem to be coming up with much in the way of results for just grommets for this size screw, I've actually posted to the gang of people that are hanging out in my new Discord server. So if you guys want to join this, it's been up and running for just, I'd say 4 days possibly, and we've already got quite a few members. I haven't done an official announcement, I've just trickled out the invite link over Twitter and things, and we're slowly building up. I'm adding different channels, so it seems to be going okay so far. I think this would be a really great space to just kind of hang out in between videos and chat and keep the community going a little bit. I'm really looking for something to just make the IMNC community feel more alive again, and I think this will do the trick once it gets going. It'll be nice to have a little look and see if anyone comes up with anything for these. I'll keep hunting. I've seen some in other countries, but crazy postage and stuff, so I'm going to keep looking. Thought I'd just update you guys that I've been using the wrong terminology. I'd remembered these completely differently. They are, in fact, lovely grommets, so that's quite nice. A very nice design. So I've been having a chat with someone in my Discord server about the potential of some drive sleds coming my way, so that may work out, and that is going to solve our problem of the perished rubber grommets, because those sleds have got intact rubber grommets, which is really cool, and it'll be all original, as opposed to me trying to find something that's a close-ish match and not really get it. But I just want to show you guys that I've popped a little bit of alcohol on this cloth, and it is fading this writing. But as you can see with this one, it kind of gets to a certain stage, and then it is fairly hard to get off, but it's really quick to fade. So let's do it next with OS 10, 10.7. That was 10.6 originally, look. Windows, 10.6, Windows 10.7, and that's got something scribbled out. Check this out, look at this fade instantly. Really does take the edge off. Possibly if I had some kind of slight, like scourer type cloth to give it a bit of friction as well, that would help. I'm using a shed ton of alcohol on this. I'm just going to focus it on one spot. See if I can completely get rid of the Windows word there, the word win. Yeah, it's getting fainter and fainter. By the way, when I was researching these drive bays, the other thing that I read, and I'm not really too sure if this is just being really very, very finicky or not, I did read that without the rubber grommets in place, you can cause damage to the connectors on the board, because the rubber grommets are also designed to align the drive correctly with the connectors on the board. So I've had absolutely no trouble putting the drives in, no trouble plugging them in, but I can kind of see the logic behind that statement. There is a millimetre or two of depth to the grommet on the drive side, so naturally it will be ever so slightly off from the connector. but the tolerances aren't perfect anyway. It's sort of push until it goes in, you know. SATA seems to be fairly forgiving in that sense with this design, so I don't really think it's much of an issue. But I thought it was just interesting because if I take this drive out now, for instance, and then I push it back in, it goes in just fine. But maybe if I had two machines side by side, one with rubber grommets, it would maybe be slightly easier to push the drive into that machine because it'll be ever so slightly more in line with the connector, presumably. But you know, that is being very, very specific. There we go. Right, that was kind of a lot of elbow grease involved, and you can still see it ever so slightly. That's super clean though. Yeah, you can still see it. So I'm gonna go and get another type of cloth. I'm gonna give maybe a scourer type cloth a go, see if that works a bit better. Got really lucky in the supplies here. I've got a brand new one of these. So let's give this a little go. I'm gonna be very gentle because this is quite tough. It's brand spanking new, so they lose a little bit of their roughness when they go through the washing machine. If you reuse them, that is. Yeah, look at that. Got to be careful. Yeah, this is why. There we go. Look at that. Got to be really light on it. Super light. Because it is enough. It would probably be better to wash this first, soften it up a little bit. Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. Just scratches them up. And if anything, at least to my eye, it makes the writing even clearer. That's wild. I think this is written on in pretty much just normal biro, like just a ballpoint pen, it seems. Or maybe like a super thin marker that's faded over time. Hard to know. Yeah, the best technique is a microfiber cloth and patience. That is the best technique, otherwise you get this slight brushed metal damage look from the scourer. Yeah, there we go. That's looking okay. Because this is the only one I haven't scoured, I'm gonna just do it a little bit just to even it up now. But I wouldn't recommend you guys do this. This would be a very unique scenario if you happen to get a Mac Pro like me that required this type of cleaning because someone has written on the drive trays. That actually looks pretty cool. So overall, we are looking pretty clean. Let's see if everything still works. So while this is booting up, I'm going to tell you guys my plan because I do have a plan. This video is really long already and I want to get it out. I want you guys to see it. I don't want to drag that out any longer, and I don't think these screws are a big enough reason to prolong this video anymore. So I'm going to continue the hunt. If these drive sleds work out, then I will get them and update you guys. And if they don't, it's not a huge deal, but I would like to get something sorted. The volume difference isn't as big as I thought, but the whole machine does vibrate significantly, so I think any kind of reduction would be helpful there. I think this is probably a good time to mention as well that I am kind of repurposing the vlog channel as more of a traditional second channel approach. So for little updates and things that aren't really big enough to warrant a full video on the main channel, like for instance if I do get those new drive sleds and I put them in, I can quickly document that in 10 minutes on the second channel. So that's worth keeping an eye on. There's a link in the video description if you're not subscribed there. But yeah, I think that's my plan going forward with that channel, because sometimes the whole reason that videos get delayed is because I'm working on something that's so long. Like for instance, I've probably had this on the desk for, I'd say roughly about a month, maybe. Could even be a little bit longer. So everything takes a significant chunk of time, as and when I can find time to film and edit and figure out what I'm doing, because it's not easy. But maybe I can do little things in between on the other channel. Keep an eye out. I'm trying to figure it all out. My thoughts around this are, if you're still watching at this point after, you know, at least 2 hours, then you probably want to hear about this kind of thing. So that's why I'm using it as an excuse to give you an update, really. Between the new Discord server that I'm hopefully going to try and keep everyone updated in as much as I can, with a video release channel, and maybe post a couple of things that I'm working on or whatever, just to give a little bit more of that interaction and things. I don't know if you can tell, folks, but with the new office and the increase in videos, I am trying to get back up to a a decent little level here. That's actually throwing me off that I've called that Macintosh HD because I think it's a boot drive. So that's throwing me off a little bit. I shouldn't have gone for that naming. Yeah, everything is sweet. Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to install Xbench, and let's do a full, as an outro, let's do a full before and after benchmark test on this guy. Okay, sweet. I've copied the Xbench pre-update screenshot. Is that the only screenshot I've got? Okay, we'll roll with that because everything's on there anyway, so that's cool. Okay, here we go. Here's Xbench. Let me get a closer view on the screen. There we go. Look at that, guys. Absolute quality. So we are testing Macintosh SSD. Ooh, that's cool. We can test the hard drive as well. We'll test the RAID. But yeah, we'll just run everything for now. So let's press start. Now we're cooking. Let's go, man. Whew. Okay. Holy, that is everything. Okay, I'm going to collapse it all. Let's take a screenshot of that. Okay, folks, are we ready to take a look? So I know we tested a few individual components earlier, but truthfully, I've forgotten the results of those, and it's cool to see it all together anyway. So, overall result, this is pre-upgrade 115.29, post-upgrade 253.42. So, we are looking at CPU test 184.92. Now we're looking at 188.36. So a slight increase on CPU, but within the margin of error. We're running a different operating system now, it's important to remember. Memory test 157.97. Memory test jumps all, ooh, hang on, where did the thread test? Ah yeah, the thread test didn't work earlier, did it? That didn't work at all. So yeah, cool, now that did work. Sweet. Memory test 157.97. Memory test 161.11. Quartz 249.17, Quartz 242.44, OpenGL 80.42, OpenGL 235.56. User interface test 289.24, 290.09. Again, both Lion and Snow Leopard too new to properly. In fact, this benchmark, we discussed it earlier. We don't need to go over it again. Disk test 49.02. Disk test 453.86. That's amazing. Check that out with the SSD, guys. That is incredible. Such a huge dramatic improvement on the disk. And you know, it was running fine before. But yeah, that's just so fun there, always with the SSD. Let's do a quick disk-only test with the RAID and see how it compares to 49.02. So we'll uncheck everything except disk, and we will run the disk test on Macintosh HD. Let's start that up. This is going to be a fair bit slower because it is a hard drive, or two hard drives. Are you done? I think you're done. Yes, results. Disk test 65.44, sweet as so. Looking at the other results, that is a fair bit more than 49.02. SSD 453.86, but 65.44. That's really nice. Was Lion on one of these guys? I can't remember. What's this? This was Windows Vista. Sweet. That must have been what was in the Win sled. Oh no, they haven't written on the drive label, so we can't see what that one was. But possibly Lion was running from a different disk. Can't remember. You guys will know better than me because you've just watched the rest of the video. Like I said, that was a few weeks back for me. So yeah, sweet guys. That is brilliant. I'm just going to capture that result as well. So this was disk test RAID. Cool. Haha, guys, I nearly forgot. Okay, cool. We've got Quake 4 running on the machine. Nearly forgot to test a game. I would have been so sad. This system will be able to max it out. This will run on PowerPC, this game. It'll run on, I believe, GeForce 1.67 gigahertz or faster. So really, the real newest G4s. It'll run on G5s. Probably run a little bit better on a G5 maybe than it would on a Mac Pro. It's probably developed and tested on the G5, this Mac version. But anyway, let's just ramp it way up. So running Quake 4 in ultra quality utilizes over 500 megabytes of texture memory. Running in this mode is not recommended. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes. Look through the resolutions here. So we're gonna have to go for 1152 by 864 with this monitor plugged in. Oh no, we can go for, oh, hang on a sec. Let's change it to 16:9. Yeah, we're not gonna get away with 1600 by 1200. The monitor is not capable of that. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm actually gonna have a little look and see what auto detect settings does. Oh, okay, it just defaults us to that. That's terrible. We can run way better than that. Ultra. Okay, so we want ultra quality, 1280 by 1024. Advanced settings. High quality special effects is set to no, we want yes. We'll leave VSync off for now. Let's crank up the AA. Advanced audio settings. Can't do much in audio. I've only got the system speaker. Okay, so let's go back. Has that kind of remembered everything? System, ultra quality. Okay, let's close the game and then restart it. So let's see if this runs. Should do. Lovely, so that's a good sign. We've booted into the intro video. Nice, the volume dial is working on my keyboard. That's handy. Menu is looking a lot clearer now, or is that my imagination? Let's have a look and see. System. No, cool, so we're on ultra quality. We've increased the resolution. Lovely, okay. It's gonna have to be a new game because I don't have any save files. Let's see how this runs. So when did this come out for Mac? 2006? Let me just have a little look and see. So it says on Macintosh repository, compatibility report, dual G5 2.3 GHz, Quadro FX 4500, and OS 10.4.11, pretty much designed with this system in mind, so it works perfectly. That said, the game does crash on 3 or 4 levels if you have the multi-core option enabled. The README mentions this, so it's not an unknown bug. Ah, did you see that, guys? That was a little bit of slowdown there. I don't really know how I can monitor FPS. That was a save game, little jump there. Whoa. Oh man, come on. Let me just turn up the mouse sensitivity. What have we got? Controls. Ooh, mouse sensitivity is really down. Weapons. Let's try that. Ah, that's a little bit better. Actually, no, that's really jerky. I've got it turned up all the way in the system, I think. It needs to go down in the system and then, as in system preferences. Mouse sensitivity, yeah. Don't know, try that. Yeah, that's okay. That's not too bad. Yeah, it's not completely smooth like this, guys, but it does look stunning. It really does look nice. Totally playable. I mean, all you'd have to do is crank down 1 or 2 little options. We have really, really cranked this up. Shadows and lighting are amazing on this. It's like Doom 3, but just another little notch up, isn't it? Whop. Yeah, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. So how was that for an upgrade then? Man, it just feels great. Lovely, lovely machine. We've put some really nice parts in there. we've kind of stuck to a very traditional approach with this one, I think. We went a little bit far with the 32 gigs of RAM. Looking back now at the other components we've got in the system, because we've got those nice original optical drives, the hard drives, even the video card, I think it would have been cool to maybe go for some proper, like a 16 gig kit of memory with the proper heat sinks. That would have been pretty cool. But yeah, 32 gigs of RAM is obviously lovely as well. And you can't beat it for 20 quid or whatever it was, 21 quid. Just a lovely system, and now we're running Snow Leopard as well. What a treat it is to have a little play with Snow Leopard again. It has been quite some time for me, and just clicking around, it really was a very, very high point in terms of macOS releases, in my opinion, releases of OS X. Just an incredible operating system. So, like I said, stick around for a potential small little release video on the Vlogs channel if I do get new hard drive sleds, because then we can put the sleds in and maybe do a little bit further cleaning with the dust and whatnot. I don't have any compressed air here, and by then I'm hoping to have my whatever kind of compressor I have, a small compressor and a small hoover on the workbench here. That would be lovely. I definitely want to build those in, and then it'll just make it really easy with these kind of things. Links to everything that I've mentioned in this video will be down in the video description, to my stuff, the other channel, the new Discord server, stuff like that. I'm not going to link to the parts because all of this is ancient stuff that you've got to scour eBay for, basically. But great fun project, nothing too extreme, but a lovely, lovely, solid Mac Pro upgrade. So I hope you've all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one.